to win power, he told me. But beliefs like this are now less widely held thanks to awareness campaigns about vultures' place in the ecosystem, driven by a local conservation NGO called ODZH. It holds talks in schools and universities, as well as with traditional healers themselves, trying to change attitudes. People now realise that instead of using vultures to treat epilepsy, we should be saving them to avoid an epidemic. If they know about a killing, they will denounce it to the authorities, beamed Francisco Wamba, the ODZH director. That is exactly what happened in May 2021, when villagers near the small town of Canchungo caught a poacher decapitating vultures in a field. They held him at gunpoint until the police arrived. The suspect was imprisoned for damaging public goods, the standard charge levelled for wildlife crime in Guinea-Bissau. As the authorities crack down, the trade has gone underground. KG market sellers now try to hide their vulture stock in stalls teeming with other products like hyena skins and cattle horns. It's hard to get a regular supply. If the police catch you, you will go straight to prison, confided one trader. While vulture heads on the local market used to cost just $2.50 each, today they can sell for more than 10 times that. But he still boasted that he could procure heads for me within 24 hours. Although there is still demand, the supply of vulture parts seems to have diminished, and Guinea-Bissau's hooded vulture population is beginning to stabilise, a painfully slow process, given they lay eggs just once every 2 years.
That was Sam Bradpiece. That's it for this edition of the programme. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope, and we'll be back with more of the stories behind the news headlines next weekend on From Our Own Correspondent here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme From Our Own Correspondent.
Well, good Monday morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're with the morning show on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on that CBC Listen app or on YouTube. Thanks for joining us this morning. That's all I'm going to say about how it feels out there. Minus 11 in Winnipeg. It's mostly cloudy. Dooley Lake is the cold spot, as so often it is. It's minus 32 up there this morning. Over in Brandon, light snow greets you this Monday morning, minus 12, and in Dauphin, finally light snow and minus 13 degrees. In Winnipeg today, we are heading for a day with winds out of the north, 20 to 40, and our temperature will be steady right around where we are now at minus 11. Let's say good morning to the team. Good morning, Nolan Kaler. Nolan is directing the show. We'll be covering weather traffic. Good morning to Brad Lillies, who's also behind the glass this morning, assisting on the team. Hey there, Brad. Good morning, Chloe Friesen. Hey.
At the wrists while a group of men bar her from leaving the hotel. Police say staff called them to the hotel to remove her because she wasn't a patron. Now Indigenous leaders are demanding answers. We're going to hear more about this story coming up. And the Manitoba Trucking Association is pushing for increased measures to keep the Trans-Canada Highway open during snowfall and high winds. In the last 5 years, Highway 1 between Headingley and Portage-la Prairie has closed 24 times because of poor weather. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right, thank you, Heather. In the show this morning, we're on right till 8:37 as mentioned, so we are going to start with some more detail, as much detail as we have on what happened in that lobby of the Marlborough Hotel. So we start the show there. We also are going to try to get a deeper interview with some of the leadership this morning, so we'll see by the time we're off the air what develops. But you'll hear more on this story on World Report in a moment. In addition to the first hour of the show, we'll talk food insecurity, an issue everywhere, but especially in rural and remote communities, of which we have many in Manitoba.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
The American band Slater-Kinney have been called the greatest rock band of the 90s.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. A federal court says it will hear a potentially precedent-setting case. It could eventually overturn a decade-long ban on adoptions from Muslim countries. That is something the government promised it would review 5 years ago. The woman at the heart of the case argues the ban is discriminatory and violates Canada's charter. The CBC's Angelina King has that story.
Assalamu alaikum.
Aside from video calls, it's been more than 6 years since Jamila Kadir has seen her 3 adopted children. They may be far away in Pakistan, but their bond remains close. Her lawyer translates.
She said
it's difficult for a mother in every possible way.
Kadir and her husband became their guardians in 2012. Pakistan made it official, recognizing her as their adoptive mother. But Canada won't, which means they can't come here. That's because the arrangement is under an Islamic system known as kafala, the only form of adoption in many Muslim countries like Pakistan. The Canadian government says it doesn't recognize it because kafala doesn't sever legal ties between biological parents and children. But the legalities don't matter to Kadir's adopted son. We aren't using his name due to safety concerns. The family is part of a religious minority persecuted in Pakistan, the reason Kadir fled.
There's a connection. There is probably a biological child-parent relationship between us.
Kadir argues the law violates the right to equality, freedom of religion, and security of the person. She says she's not just fighting for her kids, but for all Muslim families separated by the ban. Though Toronto law professor Faisal Baba says political will is needed.
A case like this should really not fall on the shoulders of a family.
The federal government said it can't comment on an active litigation. The case is expected to be heard later this year. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Economics and affordability are top of the agenda at the Liberal cabinet retreat in Montreal. Here's Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
The Minister of Housing and a number of other ministers have been working with provincial and municipal counterparts to do very concrete things that will, in fact, improve affordability issues that are so important to Canadians.
We are waiting to find out later this morning what that could mean for international students. Immigration Minister Mark Miller will speak to reporters next hour. He is expected to announce new measures to limit the number of foreign students coming to Canada. And then there were 2. Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the race to be the Republican nominee for president. DeSantis has endorsed candidate Donald Trump. That leaves only one other candidate in play, Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina. CBC's Richard Madden is in Washington. And Richard, what does this all mean for the Republican race moving forward?
Yeah, you nailed it. It's now down to 2. Donald Trump against former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. And this is a stunning fall for Ron DeSantis, who just over a year ago was hailed as the future of the party, a younger, more energetic conservative who won Florida's governorship in a landslide. He was viewed as Trump without the baggage who could steer the party away from the former president's grip. But his campaign quickly sputtered from the start. His launch was full of glitches. His message to Make America Florida didn't really connect with voters. He talked up culture wars and railed against pandemic lockdowns. And his strategy that staked all his fortunes on Iowa fell flat. He finished a distant second and saw no path forward. What's also striking is just in the past few weeks, DeSantis began sharpening his attacks against Trump, boasting how he wasn't going to, quote, kiss the ring of the former president. Yet, in his video message posted yesterday, DeSantis quickly fell in line and endorsed Trump to lead the party.
It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him.
Now, polling suggests DeSantis' supporters would lean towards Trump, so that could be another hurdle for Haley in tomorrow's critical New Hampshire primary. Now, as for Trump, he's expected to return to a Manhattan courtroom today, and he may testify in a defamation case against him.
And what about the scope of the broader presidential election?
Yeah, it's looking ever likely to be a 2020 rematch between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden, and polling suggests there's not a lot of enthusiasm for it. Republicans are pushing to make this election a referendum on Joe Biden, but Democrats are turning the tables, wanting to make it a referendum on Donald Trump.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. In Brussels, a high-level diplomatic push is on to resolve the crisis in the Middle East. Foreign ministers from the EU, Jordan, Egypt, and the head of the League of Arab States are all there. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says they will be united in demanding a two-state solution.
I think that we have to stop talking about the peace, because peace, it could be many different pieces. What kind of a peace you're talking about? So let's talk about what we want to do. And we want to do is to build a two-state solution.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects a two-state solution, and Borrell says it will have to be imposed from the outside. The foreign ministers are due to hold separate meetings with their Israeli and Palestinian counterparts. In Labrador, an inquiry into the treatment of Innu children in the child protection system starts formal hearings today. It's investigating the deaths of 6 children. They either died in care or died shortly after being in care. Heidi Adder has more from Happy Valley Goose Bay.
There was no transparency.
Simeon Jakopish's son would have celebrated his 23rd birthday this month. Thunderheart was removed from his home in Natwashish and died in 2017 after being in care in Saskatchewan. Jakopish has a number of questions of what went on 4 provinces away.
We want some justice, accountability.
The history of the child welfare system and its use in Innu communities is the focus of formal hearings this week, along with the health and well-being of the Innu. At the Shajit Youth Center, inquiry commissioners and lawyers will question witnesses who work within the system in Shajit or Natwashish. Anastasia Cupie is one of 3 commissioners.
It's important to hear from people who've been providing services in our communities, in both communities.
The inquiry will investigate the child welfare system and intergenerational trauma that followed it. Jakopish plans to be at all the hearings this week. He says the stories are going to be painful and bring back memories, but it's important to hear what happened. He hopes the commissioners and Canadians at large learn about the past and current welfare practices.
They need to know what transpired within our lives, within David's Island and Shahadid as well.
The hearings are set to run until Friday. The inquiry resumes later this winter. Many Innu hope it will result in recommendations that will let them take over their own child protection systems. Heidi Adder, CBC News, Happy Valley, Goose Bay.
The world's first malaria vaccine program for children is about to be rolled out across Africa. Cameroon will be the first country to routinely give children the new vaccines. The mosquito-borne disease is one of the continent's deadliest. After successful testing in some countries, this major rollout is expected to save tens of thousands of lives every year. Tashana Reed has the story.
This has been a long road, and so it makes this day perhaps even more significant.
Last year, malaria claimed 600,000 lives, the vast majority in Africa, and children under 5 accounted for nearly 80% of deaths. UNICEF's Andrew Jones in Copenhagen.
Now, this is a giant step forward in our collective efforts to save children's lives and to reduce the burden of malaria.
The vaccine, known as RTSS, was first approved by the World Health Organization in 2021 after successful pilot programs. A total of 20 African countries plan to introduce malaria vaccines this year, starting with Cameroon. And Bianca Livencliffe is a senior immunization officer in the country's capital.
It has been an excitement throughout the communities that finally we have another tool to fight malaria.
Still, experts say the vaccine alone will not solve the malaria problem, which has been exacerbated by climate change. Preventative measures like insecticide-treated bed nets and medicines are critical. The vaccine does not have 100% efficacy, and there are challenges getting the vaccine to everywhere that needs it. John Johnson is a vaccination advisor for Doctors Without Borders in Paris.
I think it's going to take a lot of support and guidance and hard work from countries and partners to ensure that it's successful.
A second approved malaria vaccine is on the way and is expected to roll out in Africa later this year. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
And Amina Zafar has more on this story at cbcnews.ca. Click More and Health for that. This is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Morning, Manitoba. I hope you had a good one.
Good
weekend, that is.
I hope you had a good one.
We'll help you get through this morning, I promise. I'm Marcy Marcusa with the team at Information Radio here at CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM. We're on that CBC Listen app. Light snow falling, -11 the forecast with Nolan Kaler in a moment. Also in a moment. And in the show, we're going to hear more about what happened at a hotel in Winnipeg over the weekend. You might have heard part of this story on World Report. Dozens rallied in front of the Marlborough Hotel and in the lobby yesterday. People are outraged over a video, as you heard, that's been shared online now. It shows a woman being restrained in zip ties inside the hotel on Christmas Day. So we are still in the early parts of this story and understanding exactly what happened there, but we're going to report everything we know. So stay tuned for that. Also this hour on the program, pet obituaries. More people are mentioning their furry friends in obituaries. We'll find out why it's trending. Right now to Heather Wells for more details and news. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, and as you mentioned, about 100 protesters stormed the Marlborough Hotel in downtown Winnipeg yesterday, angry over that video showing a First Nations woman restrained at the wrists while a group of men bar her from leaving the hotel. Police say staff were called them on Christmas Day to remove the woman, saying she was not a patron. We're going to hear from First Nations leaders, some who say it's time to end relations with the Marlborough Hotel. And a survivor from a stabbing in the paw is speaking out after another man was killed in a separate attack on the same day. Oliver Hart was stabbed just above his right hip. He says he watched the other man die beside him in the hospital, and he believes changes to dispatching in the paw could have saved that other man's life. We'll hear more coming up in our next news at 6:30.
Heather, I think what's interesting about, we're talking about the Marlborough Hotel story, your lead there. Mm-hmm. You're mentioning, obviously Kathy Merrick coming out yesterday, and we're going to hear that in a moment a bit more about, trying to end the practice of people being housed in hotels when they come south for care. People may not realize how prevalent that is. Like, that is constant and been happening for years in Manitoba, been part of the solution for where people will stay when they come here for care.
Yeah, the Marlborough is one of them. There are other hotels as well, but certainly it has been a kind of a difficult place to be placed when you're brought in from out of town.
Yeah, and I know, as you said, there's a number of different hotels throughout downtown Winnipeg. So, but it becomes sort of the question to the government later today about what is the better way forward for people when they're coming for care. If the community is saying that spaces are problematic, and then in addition to finding out more about what specifically happened on Sunday. So lots of questions out of that story this morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather will be back at 6:30, of course, with the next regular news. Right now, into our forecast with Nolan Kaler. Good morning.
Good morning. Here in the city of Winnipeg, think of where we were last week, Marcy, when we were sitting here. Bone chilling.
Little popsicles. Yeah.
Not so much this morning. Things are definitely a lot more temperate here in the city of Winnipeg to start our Monday morning. Not so further north, though, Morrissey, with an extreme cold warning in effect for much of northern Manitoba, including the Lynn Lake and Leaf Rapids area. And, of course, Churchill this morning sitting at a -47 wind chill with northwest winds gusting up to 70 kilometers an hour this morning. Just remarkable. And it could be as low as -53 this morning with the wind chill in Churchill. So, of course, it goes without saying, a risk of frostbite in minutes. Make sure that you are covering up north. Here in the city of Winnipeg, we can expect some cloudy skies today and a few early morning flurries with winds out of the north, and the temperature holding steady at -11 throughout the day, -22 with the wind chill here in the city this morning. Good morning to you in Brandon, sitting at -12 currently, and you're seeing some snow ending later on this afternoon, and then cloudy skies. Again, temperature holding steady in around near -11. And for Thompson, -25. You had a cold warning earlier this morning, and it actually has ended just before we came on the air. And you can expect mainly sunny skies today with a high of -23, -36, though, still with the wind chill in the morning. So even though that cold warning has ended, still do take care as you are heading out this morning, Thompson. Let's take a look at the commute really quickly, Marcy. Not much to tell you about here in the city of Winnipeg. We are keeping an eye on Manitoba highways this morning. We are looking specifically at a bit of a trouble spot, reported reduced visibility in around the Neepawa and Minnedosa area. So looking at highways number 5 and the number 16. If you see anything else out there on your commute as we start our Monday morning, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. The number is 204-788-3093.
So as I mentioned, let's start the show with what we know from the weekend. Indigenous leaders are speaking out. They're calling for action. This distressing video surfaced, and you can see it online right now at cbc.ca/Manitoba to see it for yourself. So it surfaced online. It shows an Indigenous woman being restrained at the Marlborough Hotel. She's walking through the lobby. She's approaching the door with attempts to leave. Her hands are behind her back. So it is 3 minutes. It has been shared widely online. The woman is crying and yelling. Her hands are zip-tied behind her back as she tries to leave. The video shows several men preventing her from leaving the hotel lobby. There's also another voice off camera that is clearly supporting her, saying he will be right there, and a man that goes outside to say, I will be right out here. Now, all of this happened on Christmas Day. Rabik Hoku is the Marlborough Hotel's manager, and said in a statement that the woman was intoxicated, carrying a knife, and threatening people inside. Hoku said Winnipeg police were immediately called, and she was taken into custody. She was later charged with assault with a weapon. But there's been public outcry over how she was treated in the video. So emotions were running high at a protest held at the Marlborough Hotel yesterday. Now, all of that we've just reiterating from what you've just heard us say. But this is more of what Grand Chief Kathy Merrick had to say from the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. She addressed the crowd yesterday.
But we're here as to the outcry of our people. And that we're here to be able to support and to be able to find out what happened. We have seen the videos. Our Grand Chiefs has seen the video that went around, and we need to ensure that the Winnipeg Police Service is very much aware of what transpired. We need to know that as well. We can't comment on anything when it comes to the Winnipeg Police Service and as to their investigation. We have to do this right. We have to ensure that our people are heard, but not in that tone. So we do it in the right way. That should be done, and we will do that. And we will support this young woman from a northern community, and we'll make sure that we follow up. We'll make sure that we will follow up with Health Canada, who puts our people here. Exactly. We'll make sure that they know the culture of our people that are put here. They are no longer going to disrespect our people that are put here.
No more contracts here. No more money spent here.
So that's what I'm going to leave with you here. I have Grand Chief from MKO here as well to be able to speak.
What has happened here is inhumane. What has happened here is a disgrace to one Indigenous woman. And that video that went out made a lot of people angry, made a lot of our people upset. And when you call on us, we will be there.
That was Grand Chief Garrison Sethi from the Manitoba Kiiwetinoyokimakinak Inc. speaking to protesters at the Marlborough Hotel in Winnipeg. And before that, Grand Chief Kathy Merrick addressing the same crowd. Merrick, of course, of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. CBC's Karen Pauls has been covering the story as she was also at the rally. She spoke to some of the protesters. Here's some of what they had to say in some more detail than you got from the news.
Ashlyn Anderson Williams. I'm here because what happened at this hotel was wrong, and this woman, she needs to be put to justice. A lot of the people here, they're really hurt by the action that was done, and it needs to be heard. So we're here as support for our people.
Danae Anderson. What are you doing today? I'm coming off a 12+ hour shift. I'm tired, but when I heard it today, my heart, it just hurt. I was so devastated. I was like, because these things happen all the time, and there's not cameras. People don't have the cameras, but I'm just so lucky that that was that one man that was advocating for her, and that this blew up, because these things happen all the lot and they're just swept under the rug. And I'm really grateful that this one woman gets to have the justice that they deserve, with us coming out here, shaking our rattles or drums, just anything. Because it's going on for far too long. Indigenous women are way more likely to have murders and violence upon them, where it's hard to see. So I'm grateful to be here and to be able to support.
In this case, the police were actually called here earlier because she was threatening assaults on some of the staff, and she was was charged with assault with a weapon before the cameras were turned on. Do you have questions about what we don't know? What do you need to know? What would happen before, or what the context might be?
I'm wondering why she felt compelled to pull out the knife in the first place. What made her want to do that, and why she had to?
Regardless if it was, of why, the injustices that Indigenous women face that lead up to this, just from early childhood alone, just from constant residential school trauma, it trickles down, and these things happen. And when you see someone pulling out a weapon, it's like, well, what happened in their early childhood? What happened for them to get to this place where they felt the need to pull out a weapon? A lot of unanswered questions. We want to know more. Yeah, there's a lot of pain and suffering here, and a lot of people hold that in their hearts because many of the women here have experienced this themselves.
So that was the lobby with drumming and a crowd that was gathered yesterday in conversation there with what we heard with Karen Pauls from CBC, speaking with people inside the Marlborough Hotel on Sunday. Winnipeg Police have reopened the investigation. Now, we will bring you more coverage of this story as it develops. There are a lot of questions that we cannot answer for you this morning. We do know, though, that she was zip-tied, and as you've been hearing in the news, police commented on that, but briefly. So you'll hear more about that at 6:30. When it comes to actual arrests, whether or not this meets the definition of a citizen's arrest or not is one of the questions that we have. Also, police made a comment about using handcuffs instead of zip ties. Well, the average person, what does that mean if you find yourself in the center of something? So more questions and answers. To be clear here, if you want to read more and see the video that has started our conversation today, of the video of the incident captured, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Whether it's breaking news from around the world, across the country, or in your own hometown, it's all at your fingertips on the CBC News app. Get the top stories from where you live under the local tab, or watch video clips, live events, and the national on your smartphone or tablet. Get all the news you want, when you want it, where you want it, with the CBC News app. Download the app for free today.
6:22 a.m. Thanks for joining us this morning on Information Radio, your morning show, and making us part of the start of your week. It's January 21st already, school day 5, and just some light trace amounts of snow, the kind where you go, is my windshield defrosting, or, oh, it's just a bit of snow. So a bit of light snow in Winnipeg and Brandon. -11 in the city of Winnipeg. Will stay there for most of the day. We do have, as Nolan mentioned, extreme cold warnings for Lynn Lake, Dooley, Churchill, and York, and that means wind chills, especially up in Churchill, could be feeling like around -50 on exposed skin. So very cold in that part of our province. Coming up on the program in the second hour of the show, we're going to get some more analysis of a big change that's coming to the Winnipeg School Division. They've been looking at new ways to address low attendance numbers, so they're going to try and give teachers extra time to reach out to kids who are not in school. So we're going to hear how another school division actually already does this. They use that extra time, and we'll hear more about how they address absenteeism. So stay tuned as we follow up on that story, and high interest everywhere, but especially if you have a student in Winnipeg School Division. Well, next on the show, if you notice this in the paper, you're one of the people that flips through the obituaries. When a person dies, you often learn a lot about their life by reading their story, pretty much, in their obit. But those documents can also serve as a research tool for those who want to better understand how we remember those who've died. Over the past few decades, there's been a trend in obituaries mentioning pets. CBC's Blair Sanderson looked into it.
Get a bag and bring them out.
All right.
It's just peanut butter and pumpkin cookies.
For Joanne McLean, homemade dog treats, or cookies as she calls them, are part of her daily routine. She and her husband Dave owned a number of dogs throughout their 37 years of marriage. When he died last spring, she was left with the task of writing her husband's obituary.
And when I sat down to write it, it came very easily.
McGill wanted something more personal than just a family tree.
I've always thought that other obituaries seemed strange that they named every relative they had. I'd never met Dave's father. I don't know his name. But I can name every dog that came to visit. And he talked more about those than he did about family. They were friends. They were more important to him.
But mentioning a family pet in an obituary is a relatively new phenomenon. That's according to Chris Miller, a sociologist at the University of Ottawa. He recently examined obituaries published in Canadian newspapers dating back more than a century.
In the early 1900s, the average obituary was around, 4 lines, maybe as many as 10 lines. And that really gives you enough space to say, this is the name of the person, this is the date that they died. Often you find in those really old obituaries, the body's going to go on this train to this city and people can meet it where it's going to be buried at this cemetery. And that's really all that you could say about the person.
Over the decades, obituaries grew longer in length, giving more room for descriptive language.
He doesn't just have a wife, he had a loving wife. He is fondly remembered by not just children, but grandchildren, nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles. People are really getting into the details of what made this person who they were.
But Miller says it was not until the 1990s that pets began to be mentioned in obituaries. From that decade until 2010, he found between 1% and 5% of obits made reference to a family animal. But now, that number has shot up to 15%. According to Miller, one explanation is that people have become more accustomed to sharing more personal information, thanks to the growing influence of social media. It could also just be that pets generally are becoming more important in people's lives. Sarah Lyon speaks for the SPCA.
Animals have become part of families. You see that with the fact that we call ourselves parents to animals, right? You see that in the way that we're pampering our animals and calling them our kids.
And in many cases, pets in obituaries aren't just included with a person's hobbies near the end. Instead, they're often listed alongside other relatives.
So a lot of the animals are, survived by. He was survived by his loving wife, survived by his 3 children, and then his cats, Smokey, Muffin, Mitzi, and Pookie, things like that. This animal is a part of the family.
And that's exactly how Mr. Tig was mentioned in the obituary for Anne Spencer McLean. She died last summer. Mr. Tig was her cat. McLean's daughter, Valerie Kalheim, says there was no question he would get top billing despite being a cat.
Yes, well, I mean, obviously we do realize Mr. Tig wasn't going to read the obituary, but people who would read it, certainly people who knew my mom would not be surprised that Mr. Tig was mentioned, and quite importantly. And also it just gives you an insight into my mom. And I think that's when you're writing an obituary, that's what you're trying to do, is just give people a little taste of who this person was and what was important to them. And I'm just going to tell you that Mom would just be so pleased that you're interested in her and her cat. She'd really be tickled.
And as for Mr. Tig, Kalheim says he's moved on to her sister's farm, where there are 4 other cats to keep him company. For CBC Radio, I'm Blair Sanderson.
As it turns out, some pets also go through a period of mourning when their owner dies. There's research from the veterinary teaching hospital at Colorado State University that shows pets often change eating and sleeping habits following the death of a beloved human in their lives. And in a note that was just a sad story in my house that I thought was unbelievable that backs that up, it wasn't the death of a human, but when we had 2 dogs that lived together for a long time, and when one of them died, our other dog that was left behind that night howled. She just started howling. And this was an animal that never howled in her life before that. And she never howled after that. But that night she howled. And I did some quick Googling. I can't verify this 10 times in 10 different ways, but I can tell you it said that often when a pack is broken or someone's died out of your pack, you howl to remember the dead. So I just thought that was fascinating. We are coming up to news time. We have business news with Crystalie Ramlakan right after our local newscast with Heather. Today, after quite a bit of backlash, Loblaw has decided to back down on its decision to reduce discounts on food about to expire. So Crystalie talked about their initiative last week, and now they've backed down. So we'll find out more about why. And then we're going to talk about, speaking of food insecurity in some detail in the next half hour of the program, and how it's being addressed in rural and remote communities in Canada as access continues to become even more grave and prices are soaring. So stay tuned. That's all still ahead. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. It's minus 11 in Winnipeg right now, and that's pretty much where we'll be throughout the day. Still above seasonal, still a little on the breezy side with some flurries expected this morning. Top Indigenous leaders in Manitoba have cut ties with a Winnipeg hotel over the treatment of a First Nations woman there.
Make sure that they know the culture of our people that are put here. They are no longer going to disrespect our people that are put here. No more contracts here.
About 100 protesters stormed the Marlborough Hotel yesterday. A widely shared video on social media shows a young woman restrained with zip ties in the lobby of the Marlborough Hotel. AMC Grand Chief Kathy Merrick, who you heard there, says she had been visiting the family on Christmas Day. Police say hotel staff called them in the morning to ask them to remove her because she wasn't a patron. They were called a second time when the woman allegedly returned that afternoon and tried to stab someone. Now, police say hotel staff bound her wrists with zip ties until officers arrived. Throughout the video, the woman accuses hotel staff of assaulting her. MKO Grand Chief Garrison Settee calls the woman's treatment deplorable.
What has happened here is inhumane. What has happened here is a disgrace to one Indigenous woman. And that video that went out made a lot of people angry, made a lot of our people upset. And when you call on us, we will be there because we are here for our people, the grassroots people.
Winnipeg police have launched a new investigation based on the woman's allegations. A survivor from a stabbing in the paw is speaking out after another man was killed in a separate attack. The two stabbings happened Friday. Oliver Hart was stabbed just above his right hip. He says he watched while the other man who was stabbed in the died beside him in the hospital. The other man's name was Eugene Michel.
I definitely want these three perpetrators arrested. I want them facing justice. They need to pay for what they did to Eugene and what they did to me.
RCMP have arrested 2 teens and 1 adult, all 3 in custody. Hart believes changes to dispatching in the paw could have saved Michelle's life. Hart is in hospital in Winnipeg. He's not sure when he'll get to return home. The future of Manitoba's Shelter Belt program could be up in the air. The Manitoba Habitat Conservancy has been working since 2020 to plant and rejuvenate 30 kilometers of tree line along the Trans-Canada Highway. Once grown, the trees will act as a wind barrier, better protecting the highway and traffic from wind and blowing snow. The Conservancy's Kathy Murray says they're already seeing benefits.
People seem to like it in general. There may be a little bit of windbreak value, and we see little bits of snow collecting in the trees and in the ditch, so it's something to start with.
2024 is last year the province's Shelter Rat program is funded. The province hasn't said if funding is going to be renewed, but says it is committed to 24-hour plowing on major roads. Economics and affordability are top of the agenda at the Liberal Cabinet Retreat in Montreal. Here is Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc.
The Minister of Housing and a number of other ministers have been working with provincial and municipal counterparts to do very concrete things that will, in fact, improve affordability issues that are so important to Canadians.
We are waiting to find out later this morning what that could mean for international students. Immigration Minister Mark Miller will speak to reporters in the next hour. He's expected to announce new measures to limit the number of foreign students coming to Canada. As for the race for the White House, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has ended his campaign to be the Republican Party presidential nominee, and he is endorsing former President Donald Trump.
I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge.
That leaves Trump and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley as the only candidates left in the race, and they will go head-to-head tomorrow in the New Hampshire primary. A special air quality statement has been issued for the city of Calgary. It says stagnant winter weather conditions are creating elevated pollution levels. Environment Canada says the city's air quality is being affected by a high concentration of near-surface fine particulate matter. Health officials say it could lead to coughing, throat irritation, headaches, or shortness of breath in Calgary. You can find more Manitoba news on our website, and you can find more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, Heather was mentioning in the news that information that we are awaiting and going to hear probably before the end of our program. Immigration Minister Mark Miller talking about some of the concerns around housing in this country. I've stolen actually Cross Country Checkup's question. We're going to hear a bit of the responses from that national show this weekend. And I put it up on my Facebook page, which acts as a show page during the show. So here's the question. Is Canada striking the right balance between welcoming newcomers and housing affordability? And of course, I'm localizing that. So what's your experience been in Manitoba with being welcomed as a newcomer and housing? If you want to weigh in there, please do. If you're not on Facebook and you'd rather pick up the phone and call us and you're listening to the radio this morning, our listener line is 788-3205. And maybe you'll be able to take your mitt off and call because your skin won't freeze quite so quickly. Let's get into our forecast in Winnipeg, at least, I should say. Nolan Kaler's here, though, with a look at the whole province.
Absolutely. Let's start with the northern part of the province, because if you are wanting to call in and weigh in, keep those mittens on, actually, because it's quite cold, with an extreme cold warning for northern Manitoba affecting Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, Churchill, and Tadouli Lake, which is currently the province's cold spot at minus 32 before we get to the wind chill. Churchill, you're at minus 30. With the wind chill, it feels like minus 46 out there. You'll see some blowing snow this morning with winds gusting out of the northwest quite strong, and a high of minus 27. That wind chill, though, can go all the way down to minus 53 this morning. So please do keep those gloves on. Much warmer here in the city of Winnipeg. Currently minus 11 degrees, minus 15 with the wind chill. Cloudy skies to start our Monday and a few morning flurries. We're looking for the temperature to stay around minus 11 for the day. Mainly cloudy skies tonight. The overnight low dropping down to minus 14. Mainly cloudy skies again tomorrow with winds out of the south and a high of minus 5, Marcy, here in the city of Winnipeg. That is just fantastic to hear. Brandon, much the same story, actually. Currently minus 13, minus 22 with the wind chill. You'll see some snow ending later on this afternoon, then cloudy skies. Temperature again steady in around that minus 11 range, and mainly cloudy skies for tonight. The overnight low falling to minus 16, minus 22 with the wind chill. The same story holds true in Parkland. Dauphin currently minus 14 degrees, minus 22 with the wind chill, and you'll also see some snow ending this afternoon. Looking for a high around minus 12 for Dauphin today. Thompson had an extreme cold warning earlier on this morning, Marcy. That has now ended for that sort of north central part of Manitoba, the areas in around Thompson, and mainly sunny skies expected, and still quite cold, though. The wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 34 out in Thompson today. A quick look at other current conditions across the province. Minus 11 in Pilot Mound with a little bit of snow falling. Gimli, you're seeing some flurries this morning, and the temperature around minus 12, minus 20 with the wind chill. And Morden currently is at minus 12, and they were the hot spot earlier on this morning, minus 18.
Commute should be fine. I'm guessing out on the highways are going to be in normal winter driving conditions. Within the city of Winnipeg, it was a little slick, though.
A little bit slick, so definitely keep an eye out for that. But I'm not hearing of any trouble spots to start our Monday commute, though, Marcy. Of course, we might not have heard about it yet, so do give us a call on the CBC commuter line. 204-788-3093 is the number to call.
All right, thanks, Nolan.
You bet.
Well, if you are watching on YouTube or you're watching on the main network, you might be thinking, is Marcy waving at me? And sometimes I do, so hello, everyone. But I was actually waving at Crystalie Ramlakan because she's just hooked up via Zoom for our business report this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
Let's start with a story that we heard last week. You and I were talking about that's been reversed. So after quite a bit of backlash, Loblaws backing down on its decision to reduce discounts on food expected to expire. What happened?
Yes, that is right. So the 50% off stickers are going to return. And the company says after listening to feedback from customers and colleagues, it is reversing back to its previous discounting practice of marking down last day sale items by between 30 and 50%. So the company says customers can expect to see the half-off stickers return in the next few weeks. And yeah, there was a lot of anger for the country's largest grocer after it decided items nearing their expiry date would be marked down by only 30%. Now, the company said it was doing this to try to provide more predictability and consistency, but the move even prompted NDP MP Alistair McGregor to call for an investigation from the Competition Bureau, even though experts said price matching is actually a normal practice in the industry and that they didn't think that the company was breaking any laws. Now, major grocery chains have been under a lot of scrutiny as people continue to face rising food prices. While inflation has come down from its peak, interest rates hikes are still working their way through the economy, so people are being squeezed in other areas. And shoppers are turning to discount grocery stores and private labels more often to try to save some money.
Let's go to another story this morning. A popular online home goods company is cutting back. What are the details? I think we're having audio problems this morning. Yeah, I can tell, Crystal Lee, by your face. Why don't you go to your second story about Wayfair?
Yes, I couldn't quite hear you, but yes. So, Wayfair is reducing its global workforce by 13%. Nearly 20% of the layoffs are going to be on the corporate team, and almost 1,700 people are going to lose their jobs, including 50 here in Canada. Now, all of the Canadians based in that company that are losing their jobs are here in Canada. Now, the Boston-based company says it went overboard in hiring during a strong economic period. The chief executive says Wayfair has veered away from its core principles and now needs to eliminate excess and get efficient. So the job reductions are expected to save more than $280 million a year for the company. And, Wayfair really had flourished at the beginning of the pandemic when demand for home decor was hot. We were just stuck at home with nothing else to do other than look at our stuff, I guess. But, the economic picture is a lot different now.
And third, to our last story here this morning, your third story rather, Crystal Lee, before markets, is about TikTok, and specifically why TikTok influencers angrily are calling out 10-year-olds who are shopping at Sephora. What's this about?
Yes, so they are annoyed by tweens spending big money and selling out popular items at the beauty chain and also allegedly wreaking havoc at the stores. So some employees describe kids fighting with their parents, and some TikTokers have even posted examples of destroyed sample stations. So have a listen to one TikToker who says she works at the store.
During our peak holiday season, we were sold out of literally everything at my location. And let me tell you something about these little girls. They are rude. Anytime we have like a kid and their parent about to check out and we see like a product with like retinol or something in it, like Drunk Elephant or Glow Recipe, like we'd be like, hey, just like FYI, is this for her? And if the parent was like, oh, like, yeah, this is for her, we'd be like, we don't necessarily recommend retinol products for kids.
So is social media to blame? Well, a mountain of influencer marketing could have Gen Alpha coveting these expensive items they see in these popular Get Ready With Me videos. A Gallup poll conducted last summer showed more than half of teens spent at least 4 hours per day on social media, leaving them susceptible to what some may consider predatory marketing. And even some dermatologists have weighed in saying, well, some of these products are just too harsh for some of these kids' young skin.
See what happens. I know it's been something I've noticed myself when I'm in beauty stores, the younger age is trending and how packed those stores are with young people. What's going on in the markets this morning?
So in Europe, markets are moving higher. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is up. Shanghai and Hong Kong are both down. Oil is up 33 cents to 73.74 U.S. per barrel. Gold is up 20 cents to $2,029.70 U.S. per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.06 of a cent to 74.52 cents U.S.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Crystal Lee Ramlicam with our business news on CBC 89.3. 6:44 a.m. is the time right now on 89.3. Thanks for being with us this morning. Behind the glass, Brad and Nolan and Chloe. Everyone getting ready to start the week here. Well, as I mentioned, I posted on my Facebook page this morning a repeat of what they asked on Cross Country Checkup nationally on the radio yesterday. It's a good question, and it has obviously it resonates here in Manitoba. The question is Canada striking the right balance between welcoming newcomers and housing affordability? And what has your experience been in Manitoba? Already people up early listening, weighing in. Britt Patrick saying, not at all, but unfortunately, she writes, I'm a left-wing person. I'm pro-immigration, but it's not just housing, it's also work. So I struggled hard to find work, even though I'm educated and experienced. I tried to settle for minimum wage. I still couldn't find work, and I wasn't the only one. I want to be able to have everyone who wants to live here be here, but it doesn't seem, it's just not feasible how we've been doing it, unfortunately. I wish there was a way to. So Britt weighing in, saying that she sees problems in the system, although stating in her post personally how she feels about immigration. So obviously doesn't want to be seen as anti-immigration, but acknowledging housing challenges and also finding work. So Immigration Minister Mark Miller acknowledges concerns about housing prices. Today he's going to scrutinize the number of non-permanent residents that come to Canada, including international students. So we'll see what he has to announce. But while a growing population is adding pressure to the housing market, government also does need to attract newcomers to work in Canada. So that's how we arrived at the question. On cross-country checkup yesterday, is Canada striking the right balance between welcoming newcomers and housing affordability? They followed up by asking, what's your stake in this? Here's what some of the callers shared with guest host Saroja Coelho.
I'm someone who moved here as a 14-year-old with my parents, and this might sound a bit odd as someone who's immigrated here, but this was a topic of discussion at dinner table with my family. And we can't help but feel that our infrastructure has not kept up with the growth in population. And how do you even plan for infrastructure when we have no idea how many people? It seems like the floodgates are open. But look, last year we took in around 1.2 million people. It's the fastest annual growth since 1957. So there is no way in the world we can grow our infrastructure to keep up with the demand.
I think there's a danger to saying, are we letting too many immigrants or new Canadians in? Because I think the people who are talking about immigration as something that is hyperinflating the housing market, they're the same kind of people who own housing on, a certain urban block and refuse to allow for high-density housing to go down the street. And I think as soon as we stop looking at housing as something that is a commodity and more of a human right, I think we are ever going to be in this problem regardless of whether we're bringing in a certain number of immigrants. If we didn't have the conversation about whether people can own quarter-acre lots in the center of Toronto whilst people are trying to build high-density housing nearby and getting pushed out by the community, I think we're always going to have this problem.
It's charity, but it's also basic home economics. You wouldn't invite people over for the holidays if you have a four-bedroom house. You would not invite 30 people. And that's what we've done in Canada. And it's just simple. This is not a complex issue. This is a simple issue. We should toss out almost every level of government, because every level of government, starting from city councillors all the way up to the provinces and the federal government, have strangled supply. They make it impossible for people like me who want to take a lifetime's worth of savings and build new rental housing. It's impossible. I'm telling you that honestly.
In Canada, I think what we're having is that most immigrants come to few urban centers like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and there is a huge concentration of immigration there. On the other hand, there are other cities and areas in the country that severely lack services, like doctors and engineers, and they could benefit a lot from immigration. My friends, people who worked in Moncton, who worked in St. John's, eventually they have a very positive experience because they can work in a job that meets their qualification.
So that's callers on Cross Country Checkup, or a sampling of them, calling in yesterday, responding to the question, is Canada striking the right balance between welcoming newcomers and housing affordability, and what's your stake in it? You can hear the whole Checkup podcast at cbc.ca/checkup. And we're also asking you to weigh in here from your Manitoba perspective. First couple people weighing in on Facebook are actually taking the question about housing, but also looking at newcomers arriving and other needs, and they're talking about finding work. William Edwin wrote in, we came to Winnipeg from the UK. It's not always been easy despite having higher degrees from top UK universities. We have discovered our qualifications aren't recognized. For example, master's degrees have more research than those in Manitoba, involving original thoughts being argued by research rather than attending weekly classes, but instead working with a personal research tutor. Also, it's very difficult for young, well-qualified adults to access the job market as they do not have the contacts that are so important in Manitoba. So where does that weigh in, being connected and to contacts here as you're trying to find work, but maybe also as you're trying to find housing? So we'd love to hear from you. Why don't we take calls this morning, 788-3205. And later this morning, we will hear from Immigration Minister Mark Miller, who's expected to speak to media before the program is through.
Hi, I'm Paul Havershrud, host of The Cost of Living, a national business show that looks at everything the world of money touches, which, admittedly, is a lot of stuff.
The Cost of Living. Go beyond the facts and figures and discover the compelling business stories that affect the day-to-day lives of Canadians right across the country. Economics, business, and you. The Cost of Living with host Paul Havershrud. Available now on CBC Listen.
Well, when it comes to the cost of living, food is certainly way up there. But for people living in rural and remote parts of Canada, fresh produce often has to travel a very long way to get to them. And with food being a scarce resource, prices tend to be higher. We saw that firsthand when we recently visited the remote community of St. Teresa Point in northern Manitoba. And there we spoke to people a lot about food and food insecurity, including Jackson Taylor, who's a knowledge keeper. He'd been a fisher his whole life and recently was very affected by a power outage. I just want to play an exchange I had with Jackson that starts with a question I asked him. You report on something out of Winnipeg and you say, there's a power outage in St. Teresa Point. And you think, the power was out. Can't be that big of a deal.
It was a big deal, yeah. I had half a fridge of fish, and the power outage we had, 3 nights, I had to throw them away. All for them. So I couldn't, they were thawed a little bit. But once the glaze is gone from the fish, it's no good.
That fish was supposed to last him the entire winter. So he ended up having to refish and did ultimately was successful in refilling the freezer. But let's talk about food insecurity and how tenuous the situation is for people. Rebecca Sylvester is here. She's program manager at Turner Lake and Birch Narrows Community Food Center in Turner Lake, Saskatchewan. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what are some of the unique issues facing your community when it comes to food insecurity?
Uniqueness is probably known amongst all of our rural communities. We all probably face the same thing. The cost of food, the freshness of food, the shipping of food. It comes from truck to truck to truck down our little gravel roads. The bouncing, the wear and tear of the... there's so much things. The cost of food right now is a jug of milk is like $15 in our local store. And I think a strawberries is probably about the same, $15. And then you're looking at that and you're looking at the strawberries and looking at a bag of nuggets. The bag of nuggets is $15. And when you're struggling financially and you're looking at those two things, I think I would take the nuggets because I could feed my family twice with that bag of nuggets, and the strawberries are probably won't go that far.
As you started by saying, Rebecca, these are issues that have been known for decades and decades in this country. What do you think we need to get ahead of it to make food more, good fresh food more readily available to people in remote communities?
I think growing food would be a big one. I love the thought of everybody having little gardens in their backyards because we have the space. We can grow lots of good food in our areas. We have a community food garden. It's called Little Fingers Big Food. And this year we did our first harvest. We had little kids from our school, and they were digging out this massive potatoes. They were digging out carrots. They were digging out onions and filling up buckets of food so they could take this home to their parents. And they were so proud. Even though they were standing there full of mud, they were so proud to help elders. Elders were coming, and they were filling up their buckets. And I think I'm very proud of that's probably one of the most best times of my life, I guess I could say.
I love that image of the kids all covered in mud digging around in the potatoes. Obviously, the pandemic didn't make things easier. It made access to food more challenging for lots of people. How did it affect your community?
Well, being locked down was a big one. We were locked in our community, and we have about 900 people in our community right now. People were coming home because they want to be safe at home. We can go to the lake and fish, but then there's What about the milk for your babies? What about other things you're going to need to live? So we have one local store here, and we were lining up for hours to get into the store. By the time we got into the store, there was nothing on the shelves. The money was coming, but there was nothing on the shelves because we only have one truck that comes in once a week to bring all our stuff, and they were cleaning it off. We only have so much space. So people were jumping on quads and heading over to different communities across ice. They were heading to communities to go get things that their families needed. They were doing everything to make sure their families were safe.
You might have heard me talking to Jackson here up in St. Teresa Point, a fisher there, knowledge keeper, about how he lost a freezer full of fish. But part of the conversation I had with him is he used to also fish and feed his family, and then as is part of his culture, share. So he would feed, deliver fish to elders in community. How concerned are you about elders in your community when it comes to food insecurity?
Our elders are the most important people in our lives. In our community food center, we make sure that our elders are taken care of, and we make sure that they can come and spend time together. And then not only that, they can boil the berries they need to. Elders love berries. They love the moose meat. They love the dry meat. They love dry fish. So we readily have that all the time for them to come and enjoy, and then they can cook meals there. It's a little bit easier because if you look at our elders, they look forward to this retirement they work so hard for. But then when comes this retirement, they have to pay for their medicine. They have to pay for their travel to get to their doctor's appointments. They have to pay for their hotel room, their meals. We live 7 hours from the doctor. Can you imagine all that extra stress that they have on them? And then when they come home, they pay all that. They're living on a little tiny income that the government hasn't risen in, I don't even know, since the 60s. They have to pay for all of that.
So the money left for food is scarce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you very much for telling us about some of the concerns out of your Saskatchewan community, echoing here in Manitoba, of course, across the prairies. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's Rebecca Sylvester, Program Manager at Turner Lake and Birch Narrows Community Food Centre in Turner Lake, Saskatchewan. Do you live north in Manitoba? Do you live remote in Manitoba? What solutions do you see to this? 788-3205. Heather Wells here with headlines.
Morning. Well, outrage over a video of a First Nations woman being restrained with zip ties drew about 100 people to protest at a downtown Winnipeg hotel yesterday. The video of the woman was taken at the Marlborough Hotel Christmas Day. It shows the woman restrained at the wrists while a group of men bar her from leaving the hotel. Indigenous leaders are demanding answers. And a survivor from a stabbing in the paw is speaking out after another man was killed in a separate attack on the same day, on Friday. Oliver Hart says he watched Eugene Michel die beside him in the hospital, and he thinks changes to dispatching in the paw could have saved that other man's life. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Nolan Kaler with a commute update.
One quick note on the commute this morning. David called to let us know about a stalled pickup on River Avenue in the left lane, just as you're pulling off of Main, as you're going northbound, and also as you're going over the Main Street Bridge out of St. Boniface if you are going southbound. So really keep your eyes up as you are making that turn. Keep right to get past that. Anything else on the commute, you can call us at 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Nolan. Extreme cold warnings in Lynn Lake, Leaf, and up in Churchill as well. Cold wind chill values in those areas could reach about minus 50. In Winnipeg right now, it is minus 11. We're going to stay there for most of the day. We got a little light snow. And in the next hour of the show, Winnipeg School Division is looking at new ways to address low attendance numbers. They are going to change one of the hours for school on, they're going to change the start and end hours at a number of different schools and part of a pilot project. But another local school division's already done this, and we're going to find out how they use that extra time and how they address absenteeism with some deeper experience. So stay tuned. We'll have that interview. Plus, CBC's Jim Agapito in an ongoing look in our series looking at youth and violence and how to help. We're going to go to a boxing club in Winnipeg. It's in the part of the city that's been helping teenagers after school by giving them an outlet to escape. So stay tuned. We'll hear that story as well.
This is World Report. Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. New measures are on the way to limit the number of foreign students coming to Canada. Immigration Minister Mark Miller is expected to announce them this morning. He will be speaking in Montreal, where the Liberal cabinet meets today. As Tom Perry reports, they are trying to come up with some fresh ideas to take to voters.
This cabinet retreat is focused on issues as important as housing, affordability and housing accessibility.
As cabinet members filed into their meeting, it was Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc who laid out some of their agenda. Justin Trudeau and his ministers are in Montreal looking for a fresh take on some stubborn issues. Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have been hammering the Liberals for months on housing and a rising cost of living that has many Canadians feeling squeezed. The Liberals have seen their poll numbers plummet, though Treasury Board President Anita Anand insists that's not what's driving these discussions.
That is not the case. What we are here to do is to fight for Canadians every single day.
Also on the agenda at this meeting, Canada-U.S. relations. Canada's ambassador to the U.S., Kristen Hillman, will speak to Cabinet, with the focus expected to be the possibility U.S. voters might return Donald Trump to the White House, and what that could mean for this country. Tom Perry, CBC News, Montreal.
The Republican field for presidential nominees is smaller this morning. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race. He is endorsing Donald Trump. That leaves only Nikki Haley to go up against the former president for the nomination. Today, a day before the primaries in New Hampshire, Trump will be back in a Manhattan courtroom for his ongoing defamation trial involving writer E. Jean Carroll. The CBC's Chris Reyes is outside the courthouse in New York. And Chris, what can we expect during Trump's testimony?
Well, Marcia, the judge has put parameters on Trump's testimony, the major one being that he can't deny that he sexually abused E. Jean Carroll in the 90s and then later defamed her by lying about it. And that's because Carroll already won that case last May. So he can only really talk about the harm and damage that she suffered as a result. Carroll is seeking $10 million in damages. But remember, Trump is being called by his own lawyers. He doesn't have to testify. He doesn't even have to be here because it's a civil case. Now, beyond that, it's hard to know what Trump will say on the stand because he has been wildly unpredictable in court. He has often talked back to judges, including this one, and he doesn't follow the rules. He also continues to deny in public statements that not only did the abuse not happen, that he doesn't even know Carroll. So what we'll be watching for, Marcia, is what happens should he make those statements on the stand again? Should he be found telling lies while testifying? And what happens if his lawyer can't control him?
Any insight on why Trump is choosing to take the stand?
Well, what we've seen in other court appearances is that Trump uses these opportunities to campaign, also to discredit these cases and to declare his innocence. He often speaks to cameras outside the courtroom. He held press conferences at his Wall Street building soon after proceedings last week. He also uses these cases to fundraise. And from what we've seen, Trump being in court emboldens his support base.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
The CBC's Chris Reyes in New York. The coroner's inquest into Canada's worst mass stabbing will hear from the Saskatchewan government this week. How the province responded to the 2022 killings will be the focus in this second week of the inquest. 11 people were killed and 17 others injured on the James Smith Cree Nation and in the nearby village of Weldon. The communities are northeast of Saskatoon. Today, the inquest is scheduled to hear information about the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the province's warrant suppression team. There's outrage in Manitoba over video of a First Nations woman being restrained with zip ties. It happened in a downtown Winnipeg hotel on Christmas Day. Yesterday, nearly 100 people protested in the lobby. As Karen Pauls tells us, Indigenous leaders are demanding answers and a thorough police investigation.
I'm here because what happened at this hotel was wrong. And
protesters took over the lobby of the Marlborough Hotel.
My heart, it just hurt. I was so devastated. I was like, because these things happen all the time.
They're talking about a video posted on social media of an incident in this hotel on Christmas Day. It shows a woman sobbing, her hands apparently tied behind her back with zip ties. She tries to leave, but is restrained.
She's trying to run. She's handcuffed and she's running.
No one from the hotel would talk to us about what happened, but they provided a statement saying an intoxicated female came into the lobby with a knife and started threatening people. The hotel says Winnipeg police told them to protect our guests and staff, which we did using wrist restraints. Officers arrested the woman and charged her with assault with a weapon. Garrison Satie is the Grand Chief of the organization representing Northern First Nations.
What has happened here is inhumane. What has happened here is a disgrace.
Indigenous people stay at this hotel when they come to Winnipeg for medical appointments. Kathy Merrick, head of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, wants that to end.
They are no longer going to disrespect our people that are put here.
Police say it's not clear if this can be considered a citizen's arrest, but that wrist ties can be used to restrain people, although handcuffs are preferred. They've opened another investigation into the circumstances of the video. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Cameroon will be the first country to roll out routine malaria vaccinations for children. It's being described as a historic day for the continent. Some 500,000 children die there each year from the mosquito-borne disease. The rollout is decades in the making. Cameroon alone hopes to vaccinate about 250,000 children this year and next. The Central African nation is working with 20 other countries. The hope is to immunize more than 6 million children through 2025. India's Prime Minister has opened a controversial new Hindu temple. Narendra Modi has led the consecration of the site. It was once home to a 16th century mosque. For Hindus, the site is regarded as the birthplace of Lord Ram. He's one of the religion's most important deities. The CBC's South Asia correspondent, Salima Shivji, has more.
The celebrations are everywhere. Images of Lord Ram, the Hindu deity, and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi adorn billboards around Ayodhya, the holy city that now has a grand temple devoted to Ram. Only half finished but newly consecrated by the Prime Minister.
Speechless. Temple is like a heaven.
Like a dream come true, this devotee says. We've waited for this for a long time, this man adds. It's controversial, built on the ruins of a centuries-old mosque demolished by a Hindu mob in the early 90s. The riots that ensued killed more than 2,000 people, mostly Muslims. India's opposition parties accuse Modi of using the Hindu temple as a political ploy for votes a few months out from a national election.
It kind of gives Modi a huge kickstart to the campaign.
And the symbolism is rife, says political analyst Arti Jera.
This whole thing of, making India into a Hindu country. So the temple kind of marks that.
But many of those who've traveled to Ayodhya to see the Ram temple in person are delighted. Sushil Seth gives full credit to the Prime Minister for making it a reality.
Future is for the Modi. Who come here? Why they come here? The faith in Modi.
Faith and politics intertwined in a country that's steadily moving away from the secular ideals enshrined in its constitution. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ayodhya, Uttar Pradesh.
The president of the Philippines is being slammed for taking the presidential helicopter to a Coldplay concert. It was anything but paradise for Ferdinand Marcos Jr. He and his wife were flown into Friday's concert just north of Manila. Bodyguards blamed the city's notoriously bad traffic. They said it posed a potential security risk to the president. But critics aren't buying that. One activist called it a grave insult to the millions of Filipino commuters who have to endure the same traffic every day. Even Coldplay frontman Chris Martin commented on the traffic during the concert. He thanked the audience for persevering and making it to the show. A recent survey rated traffic in Metro Manila the slowest among 387 cities in 55 countries. And that is the latest national and international news and traffic report from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. It's minus 11 in Winnipeg now, and it's going to be minus 11 later. Thanks for joining us here on this Monday morning. You're with CBC 89.3. Or you might be on 990 AM, 89.3 FM as mentioned, or on the CBC Listen app or on YouTube, wherever you're with us. Thanks for being along. This hour on the program, we're going to talk about something that could be changing your family's life if you have a student in the Winnipeg School Division. They're looking at new ways to address low attendance numbers. One of them is to give teachers extra time to reach out to kids who are missing class. We'll hear how another local school division uses that extra time. They have already instituted this, and how they address absenteeism. A full conversation before 8. In addition, this hour on the show, in our ongoing look at youth violence in Manitoba, the roots of it and the roots forward, we're going to hear from a North End boxing club how they're helping teenagers there with an after-school program that's an outlet to escape. CBC's Jim Agapito visited, and we'll hear from him momentarily. Right now, though, Heather Wells is in with updates on stories that have been developing throughout the weekend, especially one yesterday in downtown Winnipeg. Hi there.
Good morning. Well, about 100 protesters stormed the Marlborough Hotel yesterday, angry over a widely shared video showing a First Nations woman restrained at the wrists while a group of men bar her from leaving that hotel. Police say staff called them to the hotel Christmas Day to remove the woman because she wasn't a patron. She was bound with zip ties by an employee until police arrived. We're going to hear more about what happened yesterday and what is being said. The Manitoba Trucking Association is pushing for more measures to keep the Trans-Canada open during snowfall and high winds. In the last 5 years, Highway 1 between Headingley and Portage la Prairie has closed 24 times because of poor weather. So we'll hear the calls that are being made to prevent that from happening coming up in our next news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Just a small correction from when we reported in the first hour of the story about the Marlborough Hotel and what transpired there over the weekend. The hotel's general manager's name we got incorrect. His first name is Rakib. Pardon me, and we apologize for the error. It is 7:12 a.m. and Nolan Kaler, why don't we start with what's going on out there in weather?
Absolutely. Let's start with the extreme cold warning that's affecting the northern part of the province. We're talking about Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, and Dooley Lake, as well as Churchill this morning, which is wind chill at minus 47 currently. You'll expect sunny skies in Churchill today with some blowing snow and strong winds out of the northwest. Those wind chill values can get as low as minus 53 this morning, so really make sure that you are covering up any exposed skin. Here in the southern part of the province, a totally different story. Minus 11 here in Winnipeg, and that's where we're expected to stay throughout the day today with some light flurries, and we will also see that temperature in Brandon as well, which is currently experiencing some scattered flurries, and that is also the case as we get up to Dauphin this morning, and you're sitting at minus 14, minus 22 with the wind chill in the Parkland area. But because of those flurries this morning, Marcy, we are seeing some trouble out there on Manitoba highways. I'm looking at the number 5 highway in around Dauphin, as well as that's going through Riding Mountain National Park on the number 10 as well. The number 16 in the Neepawa and Minnedosa area reporting reduced visibility. So do take care as you're on Manitoba's highways in the western part of the province. Here in Winnipeg, we have a report of a stalled pickup on River in the left lane. So just as you are turning right as you're going northbound on Main, and if you're turning left as you're going southbound on Main out of St. Boniface, the car is in the left lane on River, so you're going to have to keep right to get by. Anything else you're seeing out there on the commute this morning, you can let us know at 204-788-3093.
7:15 is the time right now, and we continue our look this morning at the roots and the roots forward for helping youth involved in violence in our communities. Chris Rifa says that boxing can save lives. Chris helps run the after-school program at the North End Boxing Club in Winnipeg. Youth violence has been a huge concern for our community, and Chris says the power of fitness and discipline has been tremendously helping people in his area, especially those who have a past that is somewhat troubled. CBC's Jim Agapito had a chance to step into the ring for one of the classes.
Hey, let's go on that rope. Not on that rope. 1, 2. 1, 2.
My name is Chris Sarifa. I'm the head trainer here at North End Boxing Club. It's a free boxing program offered by Pan Am Boxing, partnered with City of Winnipeg. But that doesn't mean they just come through this door, accept the free boxing. We want them to earn it.
Good. Nice work. Let's go, Sid. Good.
We encourage them to come here with their homework, 30 minutes of homework, reading, or volunteer around the gym. So that, again, we instill responsibility and to make them aware they got to earn their spot here at North End Boxing.
1, 2, move around. Don't stay in one spot.
Hey, my name's Jordan Gregorchuk. I go to St. John's High School. I'm 17. We're at the best boxing gym in all of the North End. You know where it's at? 1100 College.
What does boxing do for you personally?
Keeps me out of trouble, builds confidence, and it gets you healthy. It's not an easy sport. It's a lot of cardio. It takes a lot of heart, but I believe it's good for everybody. Like I said, it builds confidence.
And how long have you been boxing?
2-3 months. It's been pretty positive. Like a year ago, I didn't have much confidence in myself, right? Then, I don't know, boxing helped me find that confidence, and now I'm outgoing. Made me a better person all around. I stick to things now. I'm healthier. I'm able to walk around without being all out of breath and everything. So
Keep those hands up.
It's nice.
1, 2. Good. 1, 2, 1, 2. Good. Move.
And what do they say
Defense,
after the workout and after that experience? You say,
Oh, some love it, some hate it. Some kids aren't here just for the boxing. Again, it's for the community, which is I'm happy to see.
9. Good. Let's go. Keep moving. Attack. Move.
how does the sport of boxing
that head
help
on a swivel.
prevent crime with youth, at-risk youth?
Oh, again, it's like it's a safe place for kids to be with positive people, positive role models. I have a great team that can help them guide and have a good impact in their life outside of this club.
Good. 1, 2, 1, 2. Good. Move. Defense.
Well,
Defense.
for me, the way it keeps me out of trouble is like I got something to do afterwards instead of being on the street, doing whatever, getting into whatever, you know. It gives me somewhere to be, a place of belonging. Grew up near Main Street now my whole life, just a lot of bad things, cops all the time. It's tough.
Yeah.
Living like in North End my whole life, I wouldn't say it's tough for me anymore, but at times it can be. Because there's a lot of gang violence, a lot of like, you know, our youth crime rate's extremely high right now. And it's because we don't have like many places like this where we could be, where like all the youth can be. And I believe we need more places like that in the North End.
Get your gloves on the bag. Let's go.
It's not a free ride. We gotta do like at least 30 minutes of volunteer work, homework, whatever. So it keeps us on track for school. And if you're all cut up, then good. Then you gotta help out at the gym. You gotta clean up in some way.
Much better. See that?
For your friends here that you see in the gym, what have you seen it done for them?
Like my one friend, it's helped him like get just healthier like me. We both used to weigh like a lot more last year. We've lost a lot of it since, but we're still going. Still putting in the work. A place like this, it keeps us out of trouble. It keeps us out of harm. If you're worrying about your kid's future, like invest into places like this, after school programs. We need them. We need more of them. There's not enough. And there's not enough representation for us.
What do you mean by that representation?
A lot of us get dust under the rug. Oh, you're some North End kid, whatever, right? And we're more than that. Like we're way more than that. We got geniuses and we got all that, but we don't have the programs to like express ourselves. And this is the key to that expression. Yep, one of the many keys. There's a bunch of different programs, but this is one of them.
Sonny, come on, son. Good. Jab.
Tell me about your coach, Chris, and tell me how he helps you, just not only in the boxing club, but in life in general.
Good. Keep that hand up. Keep that hand up. Yep.
He's a great coach. He's taught me a bunch of things. Taught me like just to like keep on that track, keep on a good track, right? He's built stability in my life, which I appreciate him for. It's nice to have, because not many people nowadays have that luxury.
Okay, so again, fight position.
I feel great about it because, like I said, I've been in this community, I've seen the ups and downs, and I know how hard it is sometimes when you don't have someone there to listen to you or anywhere else to release it or work on it. And I'm grateful that I'm part of this club that helps that situation.
Hey, let's go. On that, not on that
I turn frowns into smiles. With sweat. With sweat.
Other hand on your face. 1, 2.
CBC's Jim Agapito visiting the North End Boxing Club in Winnipeg. It's located at 1100 College Street in the city of Winnipeg. As I mentioned, this is part of a series that we've been rolling out, looking at youth violence and also looking at ways to move forward, in addition to looking at more closely at trends about why it is on the rise. And that is not just, in Manitoba, something that we've been sort of looking at, but across the country, there's some support that youth violence is a concern, especially post-pandemic. So why? And if you have a program and you're listening to our program this morning and thinking, you should come out and visit this place, let us know. I know CBC's Wendy Parker's been lead journalist on the series. She's heading out to some spots this week. But if you've got a program that you think is really helping in community connect with youth, or if you're a young person and you want to weigh in, even better, please reach out to the show. You can email us, radio893@cbc.ca, or you can call us, and there's always anonymous options too, 788-3205 to pass along a tip.
Forget your fancy indoor rinks, you Bonspiel newbies. Ironman outdoor curling is for those who hurry hard to curl on the frozen river.
Why are you talking like that?
I'm making the Ironman outdoor curling promo sound tougher.
But it's basically a fun spiel on the ice that everyone will enjoy. February 2nd to 4th. CBC is a proud sponsor.
Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more. Sorry, Janet.
I love that. I get to MC the opening night of that. It's going to be super fun. And spoiler alert, we actually have some tickets we're going to give away. So we've come up with a really fun contest. So you'll hear what that is in the coming days. Well, speaking of all things fun in winter, let's talk Festival de Voyageurs, which runs this year from February 16th to the 25th. Huge lineup of music, and they have venues all over the place this year. Check out their website for more, heyho.ca. You can check it out there. In the meantime, though, we want to play a bit of music from Andrina Turan, who is already confirmed to be part of Festival. This tune's called Out of Luck on your Monday morning on CBC. Check out more of the performances planned for this year. You can go to heyho.ca. I call that Friday night music on a Monday morning. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa, minus 11 on this Monday morning. We're going to stay there for most of the day. Could be a little bit slick out there. Honestly, I know they've scraped, and that's great in a lot of places in Winnipeg, but it has left ice, especially on the side streets. So keep that in mind. Hopefully, if you're walking or biking this morning, it'll be not too bad. Temperature certainly is cooperating more than it has been. Well, let's turn our attention to morning sports as always. That means it's 7:25 a.m. and Scott Regehr is with us. Hello there.
Hey there, Marcy.
So the Jets in Boston tonight. Let's start there. What are you watching for in this game?
Well, to see, among other things, if Winnipeg can match an NHL record, Marcy. With their 2-1 win over Ottawa on the weekend, the Jets have now gone, incredibly, 34 games, allowing 3 goals or fewer. If they continue that streak tonight, they'll match the 2015 Minnesota Wild as the only 2 teams to accomplish that feat. Head coach Rick Bowness was not asked who will be his starter in net, but you'd think it'll be Connor Hellebuyck. Among goalies with a similar amount of games played, Hellebuyck leads the way, and it looks like he will be winning the Vezina once again this year if things continue. One player we for sure will not be seeing tonight is Mark Scheifele. He's still recovering from a lower body injury. He was skating yesterday, but not a participant in practice formally. Bowness provided an update on his top center afterwards.
He said he felt good today, so he'll have another light skate tomorrow. He's still a few days away at least, so he's not playing. He'll probably skate again Tuesday when we go to Toronto, and we'll go from there. But he's missed, it's 10 days now. It was just a light skate today, so we'll see.
All right, puck drop tonight between the Bruins and Jets at 6 o'clock.
All right, let's go to an eventful weekend, to say the least, in the NFL. We're down to the Final Four, and are you starting with the heartbreak in Buffalo or the joy, depending on who you're cheering for?
Heartbreak for Bills fans for sure, Marcy. History repeated itself on a couple of fronts yesterday. For the 3rd time in 4 years, it was Kansas City eliminating them. And in a painful flashback, it was a Bills kicker who's largely to blame. With a chance to tie the game with just over a minute to play, Tyler Bass shanked a 44-yard attempt wide to the right. The most infamous wide right in Buffalo history, of course, came in the 91 Super Bowl when Scott Norwood could have won it against the Giants. And I know I was not alone yesterday, Marcy, thinking of Scott Norwood. So it'll be Travis Kelce, who scored 2 touchdowns yesterday alongside his besties, Taylor Swift and former college roommate Zach Collaros, who will head to Baltimore next weekend, playing for a spot in the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, remember this.
As of 2018, this NFC North team had never even made the Super Bowl, much less won it. But by 2030, gotta happen, right?
That is the late, great host of Jeopardy, Alex Trebek, having a bit of fun at the Detroit Lions' expense. Few pro sports teams, Marcy, have been so synonymous with losing, but not this year. The Lions beat Tampa yesterday and clinched a spot in the conference final as a result. It's the first time since 1957 that Detroit's won 2 playoff games in the same season, and Coach Dan Campbell says it holds special meaning in such a gritty town.
It's not the first thing you think of if you go to L.A. You got the sun, you got the beach, you got plenty of other things going on, and here, man, and it's harsh winters, right? Auto industry, blue collar, things aren't always easy, and I just think that's what we're about. You want something the city can be proud of. Though you can look at those guys and say, man, I can back that guy. I can back that team. And I'm glad we could deliver that.
The Lions will take on California's Golden Boys, the San Francisco 49ers next week for a place in the Super Bowl. I have a hunch that many neutrals will be supporting the Lions in that game. Who are you taking in the Final Four?
Now, I'm not going to call it, but I think that sentiment he just talked about is something that Winnipeggers have felt. I know how people talked when the Jets left the city and sort of tried to grasp something, if you're a sports fan especially, right?
Yeah.
Finally, though, let's talk soccer. The beautiful game over the weekend in Europe, it was far from beautiful.
Yeah, in Italy, AC Milan goalkeeper Mike Magna walked off the pitch, Marcy, after being subjected to racist abuse by Udinese supporters. Magna, who is black, says he was the target of monkey chants. The same thing happened in England, where Coventry midfielder Casey Palmer was targeted by Sheffield Wednesday fans. Numerous racist incidents in European footy over the years, and FIFA head Gianni Infantino says new measures must be taken. So he's calling for worldwide stadium bans for racist fans and automatic forfeits for teams whose supporters hurl abuse. So we'll continue to follow that story.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Scott Regehr with Morning Sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's warmer than we've been in a while. Still above normal, a high of minus 11 today. That's where we are right now. Some flurries through the morning and a bit of a northerly breeze this afternoon. Top Indigenous leaders in Manitoba have cut ties with the Winnipeg Hotel over the treatment of a First Nations woman there.
Make sure that they know the culture of our people that are put here. They are no longer going to disrespect our people that are put here. No more contracts here.
About 100 protesters stormed the Marlborough Hotel yesterday, angry over a widely shared video on social media showing a young woman restrained with zip ties in the lobby of the Marlborough Hotel. AMC Grand Chief Kathy Merrick, who you heard there, says she had been visiting family there on Christmas Day. That woman had been. Police say hotel staff called them in the morning to ask them to remove her because she wasn't a patron. They were called a second time when she allegedly returned that afternoon and allegedly tried to stab someone. Police say hotel staff bound her wrists with zip ties until police arrived. Throughout the video, the woman accuses hotel staff of assaulting her. MKO Grand Chief Garrison Settee calls the woman's treatment deplorable and inhumane.
No doubt she was very distressed, and that's why there's an outcry, that's why there's anger. People are upset because of what they saw.
Winnipeg police have launched a new investigation. Now, video circulating on social media of people sneaking downstairs during the rally and ransacking the hotel's basement, including breaking open storage lockers. Police confirm they are investigating. As for the December incident caught on tape, the general manager of the Marlborough Hotel has released a statement. Rakib Hokyu says the woman was intoxicated and had a knife in the hotel lobby. He says she was threatening guests and staff. He wants to assure the community the intention was to prevent the woman from harming herself or others until police arrived. He says they did not issue the statement earlier because the matter is before the courts. A northern Manitoba man says he couldn't believe what was happening. He was on his way to deliver diapers when he was attacked Friday afternoon. Oliver Hart had just left his home in the Paw when 3 people approached him. The box of diapers he was carrying was stolen, and he was stabbed above his right hip. Hart says he didn't know how to react in the moments that followed.
I was too stunned to think. I couldn't believe what was actually happening. You see these things on TV and movies, and you just think, that can't happen to me.
RCMP say another man was also stabbed nearby the same day. That man died of his injuries. 2 teens and 1 adult have been charged and are in police custody. We are waiting to hear an announcement this morning out of the Trudeau government's cabinet retreat in Montreal to deal with the housing crisis. The number of international student visas issued has tripled to 10 years. In just 10 years, it has been pegged as a key factor in Canada's housing crisis. Immigration Minister Mark Miller is expected to outline a plan cutting visas down from approximately 900,000 issued last year. The announcement comes as the federal cabinet holds that 3-day retreat in Montreal. The coroner's inquest into Canada's worst mass stabbing will hear from the Saskatchewan government this week. How the province responded to the 2022 killings will be the focus in this second week of the inquest. 11 people were killed, 17 others injured on the James Smith Cree Nation and the nearby village of Weldon. The communities are northeast of Saskatoon. Today, the inquest is scheduled to hear information about the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the province's warrant suppression team. You can hear the latest national and international news on World Report at 8. The Manitoba Trucking Association is pushing for increased measures to keep the Trans-Canada Highway open during snowfall and high winds. In the last 5 years, Highway 1 between Headingley and Portage-la Prairie has closed 24 times because of poor weather. Trucking Association President Aaron Doliniak says each closure can cost Manitoba's economy tens of thousands of dollars. His members want to see increased plowing and more digital signs.
Road conditions can vary quite a bit from what we see right here around Winnipeg, so just informing motorists ahead of time what to expect when entering the Trans-Canada Highway would go a long way.
The province says it is committed to 24-hour plowing on major roads, but aging equipment and staff vacancies, it says, have prevented that from happening. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Seth.
You're welcome.
We'll get to what those roads are like this morning in a moment. First, let's start with a regional forecast from Nolan Kaler.
Good morning. Let's start with northern Manitoba, where we have an extreme cold warning this morning for Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids to Dooley Lake, as well as for Churchill. Currently in Churchill, it is minus 47 with the wind chill, and strong winds out of the northwest are driving those wind chill values. They could go as low as minus 53 this morning. You're also going to see some blowing snow in Churchill this morning, so be sure to cover any exposed skin. Here in Winnipeg, just minus 11, which is where we're going to stay for the majority of the day today. Minus 16 with the wind chill. Cloudy skies and a few morning flurries as well for the day. We'll see mainly cloudy skies tonight and the overnight low falling to minus 14. And then mainly cloudy again tomorrow with winds out of the south. And get this, minus 5 is your forecast high for tomorrow. That is going to feel pretty great. Brandon this morning currently at minus 12 with snow ending later on this afternoon. We're actually seeing a lot of snowfall throughout southwestern all the way up through central western Manitoba this morning. And you're going to see a high of minus 11. Mainly cloudy skies for you tonight. The overnight low falling to minus 16. And then cloudy skies, winds out of the south, and a high of minus 4 for Brandon tomorrow. We talked about the snowfall in western Manitoba. That's affecting Dauphin as well. Temperature steady near minus 12 for Dauphin today. And in Thompson, had an extreme cold warning earlier this morning, Marcy. That has now ended. Currently sitting at minus 26, minus 36 with the wind chill. So not an extreme cold warning, but certainly a cold warning for the city of Thompson today. Mainly sunny skies, though. So makes every cloud has a silver or sunny lining, I suppose.
This one, at least.
That's right, at least this one. Other current conditions quickly across the province. Some scattered flurries in around the Steinbach area this morning. A high of minus 11 for today in the Motor City. Good morning to you in Verdun. Currently seeing some snowfall, like we're talking about in southwestern Manitoba. Currently sitting at around minus 11. And a chance of flurries as well in the White Shell for this morning. Currently sitting at minus 12. Over on the commute, just looking at those snowfalls and how they're affecting Manitoba highways this morning, Marcy, that's currently affecting highways in around the Dauphin area. So we're talking about the number 5 as well as the number 16 in the Neepawa and Minnedosa area. Those are reporting some reduced visibility and blowing snow this morning, and even more covered sections as you get closer to the Saskatchewan border. So do take care if you're traveling in that part of the province. We still heard about that stalled pickup just around 7 o'clock. It's on River Avenue in the left lane as you're making your way westbound. So if you're turning right as you're going northbound on Main, or if you're turning left getting over the Main Street Bridge out of St. Boniface, that'll be a thing to watch out for because that turn is quite sharp, and then you'll see that stalled vehicle there. So keep right to pass. If you see anything else on the commute this morning, you can give us a call on the CBC commuter line. The number is 204-788-3093.
Now, you can't leave before we talk about Chloe's awesome balaclava, okay?
No.
So let's just talk about this, because if you watch this on the main network in the first hour, if you're on YouTube, this is fantastic. So when you get the shots that look at the other side of the glass in the control room, Chloe Friesen, who's our tech this morning, has this, what I'm presuming is hand knitted, because she knits everything, which is awesome.
Yes.
A balaclava. What I want to say, crochet more correctly, which means it's more open weave. What I want to say to anyone who has anything crocheted, whether it's a balaclava or a hat, is you can make a fabulous wig out of it. So
a wig?
My mom, when I was little, needed a Halloween costume, and I was Raggedy Ann because it was all the rage in the 80s. And she had exactly what Chloe's wearing. So it was a balaclava my baba knitted, crocheted for us. But we weren't wearing it in the wintertime so much anymore because we needed something warmer, honestly, with closer knit. So she took, those old like rug hooks where you'd make the rugs in the 80s with little pieces of yarn, and you'd kind of just loop it around, and it would stick up like hair. That's what she did in each and every hole on that crochet balaclava. And she made me this rough looking but effective for the costume wig. I just thought it was reduce, reuse, recycle in all the best ways. And just this beautiful homemade costume. I still remember it. Every time I see a crocheted hat or a balaclava, that's what I think of.
There you go. And so Chloe is actually dressing for the conditions as well because, cards on the table. It's a little colder behind the glass in Studio 50.
Are you guys cold over there?
Well, it's always a little bit colder in there because of all the equipment that we're running in there. It just runs a little bit hotter, so you keep the temperature down. And so Chloe is not only dressing for the weather, but also looking amazing doing it.
It is 20 to 8 right now on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa in our studio this morning. Nolan Kaler, thank you. And next on the show, while we're talking about all things fall, Halloween, let's also think about Remembrance Day, because our next story is all about remembering, and it is quite a story. It's Michelle Finley's, Finley's. I want to make sure I get her name correct. Finley is how it's pronounced. It's Michelle Finley's story. She did not know her great uncle Ron, but every Remembrance Day she would look through this box containing his personal items. He served overseas in World War II, and then at the age of 22 he was killed in action. So this box has things like telegrams and photos, a medal, a logbook even. We heard from Michelle last week on Information Radio about how she was decluttering her house and being mindful of how she was getting rid of things for the future. Without any children, though, to leave this box of memories with, Michelle says she wanted to find it a new home. She shared it and showed it to CBC Manitoba's community reporter, Shannalee Vidal, as they looked through what's in the box and what those items said about Uncle Ron.
And I'd always known about Uncle Ron, right? We always talked about him, and there's actually an island up north named after him. I think the government of Manitoba at one time named lakes and islands and things after Manitoba's war heroes and war dead. And so I always knew he had this island up north, but I didn't really know that much about him. And then when I got this box sometime after my grandpa died, which was 20 years ago, and inside had some really neat stuff. And so every few years, I'd pull it out and look through it. So there's a really great photo of him. He was an air gunner in the Royal Canadian Air Force. He's 22, and he actually lived, they lived 2 blocks away. And so I've walked by the house that they were living in at the time when he enlisted. So there's this great photo of him.
And it's beautifully framed, too.
Yeah, I think this was in my on my grandparents' wall for a long time. I remember this is his air gunner badge, so you can even see it in the photo here. It's on there. So that was worn on his chest. Then they have all these
is that a medal?
Yeah, it's some sort of medal. It's a memorial cross. So that would have been given after he passed away. Would have come to my great grandmother. There's his lighter, his Royal Canadian Air Force lighter. So it's like a Zippo. So that's pretty neat. And then I think some of the things that are most interesting out of the whole thing are the correspondence that went back and forth while he was stationed overseas. So these are telegrams. There's about 6 telegrams here. They're quite fragile.
There's pictures and letters.
Yeah. So this is sent to my great-grandmother. They lived on Arlington at the time. This is a telegram from Ron. It's Canadian Pacific Telegrams. It's dated July 24th, 1941, and it says, Mrs. George Walters at 137 Arlington, Winnipeg, arriving CPR, so I guess that's Canadian Pacific Railway, Saturday morning at 9, meet the train, have favorite online for dinner. So he's asking his mom to make his favorite dinner for when he gets back. And then there's another one. And Ron's just saying, oh, I'm all well. I got your letters, all my love. And that one is, can't really make out the date on that one. And then Ron sent my great-grandmother birthday wishes on her birthday. And then here's the sad one. And then this one is when he died. So this is dated September 1st, 1942. Went to the house on Sackville. Deeply regret to inform you Your advice has been received from the Royal Canadian Air Force Casualties Officer overseas that your son, R95-93, Sergeant Ronald George Walters, died of injuries on August 29th, which were received on active service on August 28th, 1942. And then they go on to talk about when his funeral will be. So, and then the next ones are that come after that. So it was really sad, like, to read through these, but I didn't really know anything about him. So I decided that I would reach out to the Royal Canadian War Museum to see if they would accept this. And they have an intake process. So you send photos and the background history, and then they have a committee, like a collections committee, that would evaluate it for its historic relevance, and they accepted it. So now I'm just waiting for more information from them on how I'll ship it there, or I'm thinking maybe I'll bring it personally and drop it off. But what's really interesting is she was able to send me all of his enlistment files as well, which I didn't have any access to before going through this process. So I learned all sorts of things. Like, he was 22, he was a young guy. Big and strong, it said in his enlistment. He worked at Vulcan Metalworks in Winnipeg, and he liked doing things like playing basketball and playing baseball and collecting stamps. And it was just really interesting to read all of that and to know more about him. So it just feels really good. And I know where he's buried. We have a picture of his grave in the information I have, and it's my intention to go there someday to see it in person. And yeah, it's been a really interesting process just to learn a bit of history. And I think, I could have just put this all in a box and given it to some war collector, but I would have missed out on all that family insight. And I think maybe it brings a little bit of meaning to his death as well. So it's been a neat process. I found out more about how he died. Like, he was burnt severely, and he was burnt on like August 28th and then died on the 29th. So he had severe burns, and the medical records that I was able to see, they described where he was burnt. So it's kind of emotional to read that. Like, here's this 22-year-old strong, strapping guy who, his plane goes down and he's burnt severely, like all over his face and his shoulders and his hands and his thighs. So he died later, about 6 hours later, from his injuries.
And this is the information that you got from Ottawa.
So I got it from Ottawa. So like I said, I knew he was killed in action. I knew he was on a plane, but I didn't know the extent. And I certainly didn't know that he had been alive for a period of time before he died of his injuries. So kind of filled in the gaps. There's a picture of his funeral, so what's interesting too is my great-great-grandmother was still alive at the time. And my great-grandmother was from England. And so her mother and sister went to his funeral. So there's actually this picture here. This is my great-great-grandmother being escorted into the funeral behind Ron's coffin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of history there.
What's it going to mean, too, when you're going to have all this stuff at there, and for people, the public, Canadians, to come and see?
I don't know if they'll put it on display, or if it will go into like an archival box and be on record. Maybe someone in the future, a researcher, will want to come and look at it. I don't know, but I'm hoping that it's safe and sound there for long after I'm gone. And, it's a part of Canada's history, and I think it has meaning, and I'm glad I took the time to find it a good home.
So that is our community reporter at CBC, Shanley Vidal, out talking to Winnipegger Michelle Finley, who's donating a box of her great-uncle's Ron's World War II memorabilia to the Canadian War Museum in Ottawa. Sergeant Ronald George Walters is buried in Rutland, England. After Michelle's grandfather died 20 years ago, that box of Uncle Ron's memorabilia was passed on to her, so she's found it a good home, to say the least. And just as an interesting note, she mentioned that in his early life, as she was going through this box and learning about him, he worked at Vulcan Ironworks. And you might be thinking, why do I know Vulcan Ironworks? That's because the historic site, an ironwork shop on Higgins in Winnipeg, actually burned last year, and people were talking about losing history, especially because it was the site of some of the first labor action during Winnipeg's now infamous 1919 strike.
Commotion with Elamin Abdelmahmoud.
It's time to talk about funflation.
Crime Story.
You got one witness who can't be found.
This American Life with Ira Glass.
There are signs that read, see something, say something.
Radio Lab
what is coming up? What is going wrong, actually?
The Sunday Magazine with Pia Chattopadhyay.
How does the last 24 plus hours complicate or change things?
Telling stories, Sunday night on CBC Radio 1 and on the Listen app.
-11, we're going to stay there for most of the day in Winnipeg. Very light snow falling. -13 over in Brandon, and extreme cold in Lynn Lake and Churchill today with wind chills around -50. So snuggle into bed if you can. Speaking of bed, coming up after 8, do you know this sound? Do you sleep with a snorer? Or maybe do you not get a lot of sleep because you have a snorer in the bed? There's a reason why sleep is sometimes referred to as sawing logs. It's the loud sound of snoring that people make while doing it. We're going to get to the bottom of why some people snore and what to do about it and when it is a health concern. And this is building on our series. Last week we asked you if you sleep separate from your partner and why. So we'll have more on that after 8. Right now, though, teachers in the Winnipeg School Division will soon get an extra hour to address high rates of absenteeism in a pilot project. It starts in February. Some high schools in the division will have a late start or early dismissal on certain days. Here is what is behind it with Superintendent Matt Henderson.
To bring staff together to say, hey, who are the kids that are on our radar? Who are the kids that are we missing? And it's the classroom teacher's job and responsibility to go to the house, make the home visit, make the call saying, hey, we miss you. I need you here in my class. And so we needed a bit of flex time to do that. And so late start, early dismissal is a way to just create that space.
So that's the thinking behind it in Winnipeg in Winnipeg School Division. And as I mentioned, it's a pilot project there. But still in the city, the Seven Oaks School Division has been doing early dismissals and late starts for some 20 years. So to find out how they use the extra hour, we have Tony Kreml with us via Zoom. He's superintendent of that division. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
Thanks for being with us. I see you're already at school. You got the books behind you.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Yeah.
So how do teachers use that extra hour? What's been beneficial in your division?
So within our high school context, every Wednesday, as you mentioned, there's either a late start or early dismissal. So that's giving teachers an hour of time to collaborate. And so the starting point it's multifold. Part of it is about what are we teaching? How are we teaching it? How are we assessing that? Who are those students who aren't succeeding with us? And who are those that are? And when it comes to those who aren't succeeding, we're again planning on best approaches to get at that. I mean, the other part of this is also time for schools to come together around school initiatives. I'll just cite a couple of examples. There were gowns for grads at one point. I know some of our schools have expanded that, to include suits and other clothing, and so that had become a school-wide approach. Another example of this would be about nutrition programs and what is the best way that we could approach this in an equitable fashion for all our students, so they're not stigmatized if they're reaching out. So it's sure.
I would just want to interject and ask you more also about the absenteeism, because Matt Henderson in Winnipeg Division was saying part of this to address that in a direct fashion, as you said, the time can be used in many ways to try and re-engage students to be there. Well, I appreciate that. I wonder about the direct response, because he was talking about teachers actually, even going to homes to find out what's happening with kids. So what's happened in your division on that front, and has this had an impact on absenteeism rates?
Yeah, so say that it's twofold. And so the first part I talked about is creating those safe, caring, and equitable schools. So when students come, they feel welcome within our classrooms and within our school communities. But further to your point about those who aren't getting there, we also identify those. We have learning support teachers, administrators, and classroom teachers that become part of that discussion, not exclusively during this time, but as a matter of a wraparound approach that we take. So certainly those school visits happen, and those early dismissals, late starts can help in supporting that initiative.
And what's happened with your absenteeism rates since you've been taking the approach to re-engage kids and try to work on this with that extra hour? Have you seen a direct impact?
So we've had this in play for 20 plus years. And so we certainly over that course of time, have seen our attendance has been good. I would say that in Seven Oaks, in terms of chronic absenteeism, it's below 5%. And by chronic, I mean, students who are missing 20% or more of the school day. So that's something that we're proud of, but we'll continue to work at.
Do you have concerns about low absenteeism in 2024 at all in Seven Oaks?
I think anytime a student that is absent and is not connected to our school, that's going to be a concern for us, and we certainly do have that. And I know that our school teams are working on that to make those connections.
What was the feedback from teachers and students when or what is the feedback to having this sort of different start time and end time to the day? I know that's a difficult question because it's been in place for so long, but what do you hear from families and from teachers?
I think teachers welcome that time to get together. It's that 1 hour uninterrupted time.
Hey there, Adam.
Given the work that they're in, and that means that they're in classrooms with upwards of 20 to 25 students on a daily basis. So this time to get together,
we now know who will be representing the province at next month's Scotties. Adam, Saskatoon Skylar.
Pardon me, we're obviously having some bleed through from another feed here, and I apologize, Mr. Kreml, for that.
That's okay.
Yeah, if you could pick up your last thought, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so in terms of teachers coming together on that time, the feedback that we get is that it is extremely useful to have that time to come together with your colleagues. In terms of students, they too enjoy it. That gives them a little bit of a flex and a different look. And this happens on Wednesdays, and so many will still come to school early or stay later, and they're able to do some work or get into weight rooms and the like. And I know for parents, it requires some juggling on their part. And so we're appreciative of the efforts that they take and the work that they do with us in working together.
Really appreciate your time via Zoom this morning. Mr. Kreml, thank you very much for being with us.
Okay, thanks, Marcy. Take care.
You as well. Tony Kreml, Superintendent of the Seven Oaks School Division, joining us this morning to weigh in on what they've been doing for some 20 years, what is now a new pilot project for the Winnipeg School Division, which is to change the times 1 day a week in school, in their case, to address specifically absentee rates. Right now, 3 minutes to 8 o'clock, Heather Wells is with us with a news update. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, we have just heard from Immigration Minister Mark Miller on new measures to limit the number of international students coming to Canada, including a temporary 2-year cap on the number of new international student permits. He says there will be roughly 35% fewer permits. So we'll hear more on that coming up on World Report in just a few minutes from now. As well, outrage over video of a First Nations woman being restrained with zip ties drew about 100 people to protest at downtown Winnipeg's Marlborough Hotel yesterday. We'll hear what went on there in our next local news at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
We're going to hear more from Mark Miller as well after 8 o'clock in some detail. He is still speaking, to be clear, as Heather mentioned, but we are taking part of what he's already said, so we'll give that to you after 8. You're weighing in on this as well. Diane Poulin saying, I value we're a welcoming country and province, but the bud is our social safety net. It's fraying. Diane says it's not just affordable housing or our healthcare system, and daycares are a capacity as well. Newcomers need those services as well. How will they even find a family doctor? So just weighing in on the number of people coming in country and trying to meet needs. You've been weighing in on my Facebook page. You can call us 788-3205 as well. Light snow falling -11, and in traffic, you might want to be careful on highways 5 and 16, reduced visibility and blowing snow. In addition, River Avenue at Maine, the left lane has had a blockage there. You might be, might be not too bad right now. Call and update us if you need, 788-3093. So in addition, from hearing more from Mark Miller after 8, we're going to talk snoring. If you have trouble sleeping, because of that snoring person beside you. We'll talk about what that annoying noise could be a sign of and when to worry about it. So that's after 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa. World Report, though, is first.
Q with Tom Power.
The American band Slater-Kinney have been called the greatest rock band of the 90s. Carrie Brownstein and Corin Tucker from the band will be here to talk about what it's like to hear that, plus the tragedy that led to their new album, Little Rope.
Go softly with me. My heart is wrong.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcast.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Companies are pouring thousands of dollars into programs that help employee well-being, but are they really making a difference? In the first installment of our wellness series, we look at the workplace, and we'll speak with experts calling for a revamp, coming up on The Current.
Good morning from CBC News. I'm Marcia Young. Immigration Minister Mark Miller has just unveiled new measures limiting the number of international students coming to Canada. The first is a temporary 2-year cap on the number of new international student permits. In 2024, he says there will be roughly 35% fewer permits.
The cap will not apply to students in graduate levels of studies, including master's and doctoral students. Those are the people we're looking for. Study permit applications at the elementary and secondary school levels will also be exempt.
Miller says he is also changing the eligibility criteria for international student work permits starting in September. He says open work permits will not be available to public-private institutions. They will only be available to the spouses of students enrolled in master's, doctorates, and professional programs. A federal court says it will hear a potentially precedent-setting case. It could eventually overturn a decade-long ban on adoptions from Muslim countries. That is something the government promised it would review 5 years ago. The woman at the heart of the case argues the ban is discriminatory and violates Canada's charter. The CBC's Angelina King has the story.
Assalamu alaikum.
Aside from video calls, it's been more than 6 years since Jamila Kadir has seen her 3 adopted children. They may be far away in Pakistan, but their bond remains close. Her lawyer translates.
She said
it's difficult for a mother in every possible way.
Kadir and her husband became their guardians in 2012. Pakistan made it official, recognizing her as their adoptive mother. But Canada won't, which means they can't come here. That's because the arrangement is under an Islamic system known as kafala, the only form of adoption in many Muslim countries like Pakistan. The Canadian government says it doesn't recognize it because kafala doesn't sever legal ties between biological parents and children. But the legalities don't matter to Kadir's adopted son. We aren't using his name due to safety concerns. The family is part of a religious minority persecuted in Pakistan, the reason Kadir fled.
There's a connection. There is probably a biological child-parent relationship between us.
Kadir argues the law violates the right to equality, freedom of religion, and security of the person. She says she's not just fighting for her kids, but for all Muslim families separated by the ban. Though Toronto law professor Faisal Baba says political will is needed.
A case like this should really not fall on the shoulders of a family.
The federal government said it can't comment on an active litigation. The case is expected to be heard later this year. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
And then there were 2. Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the race to be the Republican nominee for president. DeSantis has endorsed candidate Donald Trump. That leaves just one other candidate in play, Nikki Haley, the former governor of South Carolina. CBC's Richard Madden is in Washington. And Richard, what does this all mean for the Republican race going forward?
Yeah, you nailed it. It's now down to 2. Donald Trump against former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. And this is a stunning fall for Ron DeSantis, who just over a year ago was hailed as the future of the party, a younger, more energetic conservative who won Florida's governorship in a landslide. He was viewed as Trump without the baggage who could steer the party away from the former president's grip. But his campaign quickly sputtered from the start. His launch was full of glitches. His message to Make America Florida didn't really connect with voters. He talked up culture wars and railed against pandemic lockdowns. And his strategy that staked all his fortunes on Iowa fell flat. He finished a distant second and saw no path forward. What's also striking is just in the past few weeks, DeSantis began sharpening his attacks against Trump, boasting how he wasn't going to, quote, kiss the ring of the former president. Yet, in his video message posted yesterday, DeSantis quickly fell in line and endorsed Trump to lead the party.
It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him.
Now, polling suggests DeSantis' supporters would lean towards Trump, so that could be another hurdle for Haley in tomorrow's critical New Hampshire primary. Now, as for Trump, he's expected to return to a Manhattan courtroom today, and he may testify in a defamation case against him.
And what about the scope of the broader presidential election?
Yeah, it's looking ever likely to be a 2020 rematch between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden, and polling suggests there's not a lot of enthusiasm for it. Republicans are pushing to make this election a referendum on Joe Biden, but Democrats are turning the tables, wanting to make it a referendum on Donald Trump.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. In Brussels, a high-level diplomatic push is on to resolve the crisis in the Middle East. Foreign ministers from the EU, Jordan, Egypt, and the head of the League of Arab States are all there. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says they will be united in demanding a two-state solution.
I think that we have to stop talking about the peace, because peace, it could be many different pieces. What kind of a peace you're talking about? So let's talk about what we want to do. And we want to do is to build a two-state solution.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects a two-state solution, and Borrell says it will have to be imposed from the outside. The foreign ministers are due to hold separate meetings with their Israeli and Palestinian counterparts. A provincial inquest into Canada's worst mass stabbing begins its second week today. 11 people were killed in the 2022 attack that began in James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. 17 others were injured. Sam Sampson has more on what the jury has heard so far and what's to come.
It's really exhausting at the end of the day.
But Deborah Burns endures this provincial inquest for answers. She wants to know why her father and 10 others were stabbed to death. Miles Sanderson died in police custody shortly after his arrest, almost 4 days after the mass casualty. There's no trial, so this inquest is the only chance to put details on the public record. So far, testimony revealed Sanderson may have lived with antisocial personality disorder. He also used drugs like alcohol and cocaine. In the days leading up to the stabbings, he had several arguments about selling drugs. Burns hopes the jury can focus on that pervasive issue.
So we talked a lot about the mass murder and putting the whole blame on Miles, but there is a bigger picture here. The drugs, that wasn't questioned. Where did it come from? Are they further investigating?
The jury heard graphic details of Sanderson's abuse against his common-law partner, Vanessa Burns. She hopes Saskatchewan, the province with the highest rate of domestic violence, creates better supports for survivors.
It's just we have to fend for ourselves. We have nowhere to go. We have no money, no job. We have kids. We don't want to burden people. It's just not an easy road.
Family members want to know why Sanderson, a man with 59 prior convictions and a high likelihood to reoffend, was ever given statutory release. Answers they may get this week as we hear from corrections and parole board staff. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Melfort, Saskatchewan.
The world's first malaria vaccine program for children is about to be rolled out across Africa. Cameroon will be the first country to routinely give children the new vaccines. After successful testing in some countries, this major rollout is expected to save tens of thousands of lives every year. Deshauna Reed has the story.
This has been a long road, and so it makes this day perhaps even more significant.
Last year, malaria claimed 600,000 lives, the vast majority in Africa. And children under 5 accounted for nearly 80% of deaths. UNICEF's Andrew Jones in Copenhagen.
Now, this is a giant step forward in our collective efforts to save children's lives and to reduce the burden of malaria.
The vaccine, known as RTSS, was first approved by the World Health Organization in 2021 after successful pilot programs. A total of 20 African countries plan to introduce malaria vaccines this year, starting with Cameroon. And Bianca Livencliffe is a senior immunization officer in the country's capital.
It has been an excitement
throughout the communities. That finally we have another tool to fight malaria.
Still, experts say the vaccine alone will not solve the malaria problem, which has been exacerbated by climate change. Preventative measures like insecticide-treated bed nets and medicines are critical. The vaccine does not have 100% efficacy, and there are challenges getting the vaccine to everywhere that needs it. John Johnson is a vaccination advisor for Doctors Without Borders in Paris.
I think it's going to take a lot of support and guidance and hard work from countries and partners to ensure that it's successful.
A second approved malaria vaccine is on the way and is expected to roll out in Africa later this year. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcus. A little milder this Monday, certainly than last week. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. This is CBC. So it's minus 12 in the city of Winnipeg. We're going to stay there for most of the day. An update, though, on the full forecast and the commute coming up in a moment. This half hour on the show, are you up yet? Maybe you're up all night because you sleep beside a snorer. Last week we talked about sleep divorce. It's a phrase that's being thrown around if you decide to sleep in separate beds. But if you have trouble sleeping at night because of a snoring person beside you, you might want to understand why they're snoring. So is it just an annoyance or is it a sign of a deeper health problem? Could be both. How do you know? Stay tuned, we have a special report. But developing this hour, as you heard at the top of World Report, there are changes coming to how international students make their way to work here in Canada. So we'll hear more about that. Immigration Minister Mark Miller just finished speaking, so we're going to hear more about what he said outlining these changes, including a temporary 2-year cap on new international student permits. So that's coming up momentarily. Right now to Heather Wells for other developing stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, about 100 protesters stormed the Marlborough Hotel in downtown Winnipeg yesterday, angry over a widely shared video of a First Nations woman restrained at the wrist while a group of men bar her from leaving the hotel. We're going to hear what happened at the Marlborough then on Christmas Day and what happened yesterday coming up. The Manitoba Trucking Association is pushing for more measures to keep the Trans-Canada Highway open during snowfall and high winds. In the last 5 years, Highway 1 between Headingley and Portersville Prairie has closed 24 times because of poor weather. Our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heath.
You're welcome.
Nolan Kaler, speaking of all things snowy and blowy, what's up?
It's definitely snowy and blowy up in the north where we've got an extreme cold warning to boot. Blowing snow this morning in Churchill with winds out of the northwest gusting up to 70 kilometers an hour. The wind chill right now feeling like minus 47, but it could get all the way down to minus 53 this morning with the wind chill. So it goes without saying, cover up those exposed skin, people. So here in the city of Winnipeg, it is completely different. Minus 12 currently. It'll be around minus 11 throughout the rest of the day with a few scattered flurries in around the city of Winnipeg. Lots of snow also falling in the western part of the province this morning. We're looking at flurries in the Brandon area. That'll end this afternoon, and they're also looking for a high of minus 11 today in the Wheat City. And that's snowfall all the way up into Dauphin today with snow ending this afternoon. Currently minus 14 out in Dauphin, and those that snowfall, Marcy, is affecting highways out in the Parkland area as well. Looking at the Highway 5 in around the Dauphin area, and especially the number 16 as well in the Neepawa and Minnedosa regions. You're seeing some reduced visibility out there and also some covered highway sections as you're getting towards the Saskatchewan border. So do take care as you're out there on those highways this morning. Also here in the city of Winnipeg, it's been a pretty quiet morning, all things considered, save for that stalled car that was reported last hour on River Avenue in the left lane, just as you are turning right, driving north on Main Street to get onto River, or if you're driving south, you're turning left onto River over the Main Street Bridge. It's going to come up quick, so do keep your wits about you and keep right to get past. If you see anything else there on the commute in the final half hour of Information Radio, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. The number is 204-788-3093.
8:14, let's get some more detail on that developing story that led World Report. So for some context here, the federal government is reducing the volume of international students coming to Canada. That was confirmed in an official announcement within the last half hour here. Ottawa shares jurisdiction over Canada's international student program with the provinces, and the federal government issues visas for students, while provincial governments are responsible for regulating colleges and universities, just for clarity about how this all works in our country. So the feds had said that Canada was on pace to host about 900,000 international students in 2023. And a source told our colleagues at Radio-Canada that the government had been looking specifically at provinces that accept more international students than their housing stock can accommodate. So people come here and they have nowhere to live. We have heard similar concerns from international students in our city, telling CBC here locally, CBC Manitoba, I spoke with one of them numerous times, that it is difficult to find quality housing once you get here. Now, the confirmation came and the changes were announced with some specifics within, as I mentioned just this morning, within the last half hour from Immigration Minister Mark Miller as he unveiled the new measures.
I am announcing a temporary 2-year cap on new international student permits. It is the latest in a series of measures to improve program integrity and set international students up for the success in order to maintain a sustainable level of temporary residence in Canada as well. To ensure that there is no further growth in the number of international students in Canada for 2024, we are setting a national application intake cap for a period of 2 years. For 2024, the cap is expected to result in approximately 364,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023. In the spirit of fairness, we are also allocating the cap space by province based on population, such as that some provinces will see much more significant reductions. We'll continue to work closely with those provinces and territories to put these measures into place, as they will be responsible for determining how the cap is distributed between its designated learning institutions that they have jurisdiction over. In addition, effective immediately, applicants must provide a provincial attestation with their study permit application. At the same time, the cap will not apply to students in graduate levels of studies, including master's and doctoral students. Those are the people we're looking for. Study permit applications at the elementary and secondary school levels will also be exempt. In the coming weeks, we will be announcing that open work permits will only be allowed and be available to spouses of international students enrolled in master's and doctoral programs, as well as professional programs such as medicine and law. Spouses of international students enrolled in other levels of study, including undergraduate and college programs, will no longer be eligible. To be clear, the cap will not apply to applicants within Canada looking to extend their studies, as it wouldn't be fair to prevent someone from finishing the program, nor will the cap have an effect on study permit holders currently in Canada. These temporary measures will be in place for 2 years, and the number of new study permit applications that will be accepted in 2025 will be reassessed at the end of this year.
So that is Immigration Minister Mark Miller just announcing, as we said, right over the 8 o'clock hour, new measures to limit the number of international students coming to Canada. So regarding changing the eligibility, in addition, for international student work permits, that's something else that's changing. The number of visas issued to international students, for context, has tripled over the past decade. So that announcement came out of Montreal. The federal cabinet was holding a 3-day retreat right now in Montreal. So these are changes that are just brand new. So if you want to react, or you have a thought, or you're out there, maybe you're sitting on the bus with your earbuds in and you're an international student, you're going to school this morning, 788-3205 is where you can call us. And if you want to read past stories and coverage we've done of this locally, the challenges that students have specifically finding housing in our community, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. I know our colleague Zubina Ahmed did a story just last fall talking to students about this. And at that time, the President president of the University of Manitoba Students' Union, said it is a significant challenge for international students to find accessible and affordable housing. So is this part of the answer moving forward, this cap? Does this raise concerns for you? Why or why not? Or do you think this is an approach that you're behind? So weigh in, anyone weigh in, 788-3205.
Uncover from CBC Podcasts is your source for exceptional storytelling and groundbreaking journalism. Unveil the shocking secrets of one of Canada's most prolific fashion moguls. Dissect the events that led to the city of Philadelphia dropping a bomb on a family of American citizens. And dive into the unsolved murders of 2 Canadian billionaires. The very best in award-winning true crime. Uncover, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, from Uncover to maybe covering your head, this is a sound you might associate with tossing and turning. Yeah, that's snoring. Last week, we told you how it's leading some couples to sleep apart, undergoing something called a sleep divorce. Today, though, we're going to have a deep dive into one of the major culprits for why people make that decision to sleep apart, and it is snoring. And why could that be a sign, though, of a more serious health issue? CBC producer Antonia Reid joins us now with more on that. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what exactly is going on when someone snores?
So I have to admit, I feel like I have a little bit of an insider perspective on this because I am someone who snores. That sound you heard off the top, that was me recorded by my partner while I was sleeping, just to prove to me how loudly I snore. And I'm well acquainted with the term sleep divorce. Honestly though, for me, it's not really a solution. So I wanted to get some answers. So I spoke with Dr. Frances Chung at the University of Toronto. She's the ResMed Research Chair of Anesthesia, Sleep, and Perioperative Medicine at the University Health Network. She says lots of people snore, so I should take that to heart. It's not uncommon, but snoring over 50 decibels is concerning. That's where you can hear it through the walls. And while it's annoying to the people around you, it's what the snoring signals that's the real problem: sleep apnea. Here's how she explains what's going on.
The muscles in the back of the throat, they relax too much to allow for proper breathing. And these muscles support the back of the roof of the mouth, known as the soft palate. They also support the tongue and side wall of the throat. So when you sleep, these muscles relax.
Yeah, so that relaxing and you're trying to breathe, that's what causes the snoring sound. But when the airway closes too much, the oxygen levels drop, carbon dioxide builds up, and that sends a signal to your brain that arouses you briefly from sleep. You gasp for air. You don't even know this is happening, but that is what sleep apnea is. Now, snoring doesn't always signal sleep apnea, but it is one sign.
Just so you don't feel alone in this, I also snore, and apparently super loudly too. So let's move on. What are the factors that contribute to someone snoring beyond what you've shared already, and then maybe perhaps having sleep apnea?
So Dr. Chung says one tiny thing that you could do to help you is to sleep on your stomach. That can help with the relaxing of your throat part. But really, sleep apnea, it affects about 9 to 20% of the general population. And, she developed a questionnaire that you can do online to help you figure out whether you might have apnea. It's called the Stop Bang questionnaire. It's a weird acronym, but it stands for S is for snoring, T is for tired, you're tired all the time. O is for observation, somebody observing you snore and maybe giving you the elbow in the night. P is for high blood pressure. B is for body mass index of more than 35. A is for age, so if you're over 50. N is for neck size, if your neck is more than 16 inches. And G is for gender, so are you male? Men are more likely to have sleep apnea.
What is the impact on a person's health if they have it?
So it's really notable, I think, that Dr. Chung is an anesthesiologist. It's really how she got interested in sleep in the first place because, people with sleep apnea have a slightly higher increased chance that they're going to die or stop breathing during surgery or after surgery. So it's a really big concern for the people who are administering the drugs to help them fall asleep. But of course, there are other issues that are more common, and the list is long. Depression is a big one. Heart disease and the cancer risk is higher, says Dr. Chung. And of course, fatigue is a really big one. I spoke with Ryan Brook, who's a university professor who lives in Saskatoon, and someone who's lived with severe snoring and sleep apnea issues for most of his life until something that happened to him about 12 years ago. Give a listen.
I was sitting at a red light driving to work in the morning, and I just had 8 hours of sleep that night or something. And I dozed off at the red light, and my foot slipped off the brake, and I moved forward. And luckily, I didn't go into traffic. There was a car in front of me that I barely bumped into, and we got out and said, "No problem, no harm, no foul," and away we go. But I went and said, "This is crazy."
Wow, it was really scary for him. You think, fatigue, big deal, but if you're driving, it can be a really big deal. He after that, he immediately went out and got help. He got a sleep study and got a prescription for a CPAP. Now, the first time he used this CPAP, if you're not familiar, it stands for continuous positive airway pressure. It's just this little machine that you wear that blows air into your nose via a hose and mask that you wear while you're sleeping. Now, Ryan, the first time he used this, he said he woke up at 2:15 in the morning and started to have a shower because he thought it was morning because he had felt that well rested. And since that, it's changed his life. He's a real evangelist for these things. He uses it all the time, even when he's having a nap. And he says the only one who loves it more than him is his wife.
I bet. It is good news for Ryan. It's positive from his perspective. But I mean, last week we heard about this term sleep divorce, and it's not a negative thing. A lot of people don't like the term, but it is sleeping apart. What did other people tell you about the impact that snoring and apnea have on a relationship?
So, yeah, not everyone is as lucky as Ryan. Dr. Chung cited a 2010 study that says 63% of people with sleep apnea have relationship problems. And it really did, it was echoed by a lot of the people that I talked to, whether it was just the fatigue or that resentment of not feeling well rested. One of the people I talked to was Amy DeWolf, who is a shift worker. Both she and her partner work in the automotive industry. And she's having some issues. And so she sleeps in a spare room. Here she explains why.
Sleeping with him, he tosses and turns and he snores. He talks in his sleep, and he's got this sleep apnea where he stops breathing. And every time he does that, it wakes me up. Like every time. And I either have to shake or I have to touch him to get him to start gasping for air again. So it's very stressful for me, who is a light sleeper, to sleep beside somebody like that.
Yeah, so it's you can hear sort of she's stressed out about it because not only is it's disturbing her sleep, but she's really genuinely worried about him. That he has some health problems, and so she's trying to convince him to go and get a sleep study and maybe even a CPAP.
If someone is listening and they haven't thought about this before and they suspect, oh, maybe I have sleep apnea, or maybe they've even been told by their partner that they snore, what might they do?
So, Dr. Chung says the best thing to do is to get that sleep study or get a CPAP. But, for me, it was a little bit, I wasn't sure that was the first thing I wanted to do. So I went to Dr. Google, which I would say I should warn people that maybe it's not the best thing to do, because I found all sorts of different weird and wonderful cures out there. Like I even bought a mouth guard to wear at night to help me stop snoring. It didn't work. I've used it a few times, but it's so uncomfortable. I ended up taking it out in my sleep. So get that. Dr. Chung says you really get that sleep study. That's where you go to a clinic and they monitor you overnight. They hook you up to wires and sensors. I did one back in November. It's like booking into a hotel. It's a little bit weird sleeping with those sensors, but I ended up finding out that I do have mild sleep apnea.
Oh, you do? Okay, so given that, have you tried a CPAP?
Not yet, and really, I think it's more about my vanity than anything. But really, after doing this story, I think I'm over it. Dr. Chung, she says the new CPAPs are really, they're lighter, they're easier to wear. And then she told a funny story about what happened during one study where she gave the participants CPAPs to use.
We have patients that refuse to return our machine, and one patient said his sexual function is much better. So I think there's something to it.
You're giving us lots to think about here.
Exactly. I know. Not necessarily a scientific study, but it worked for one guy. So I might think about going out and getting that CPAP now.
Sleep well, whatever you're wearing or doing. Thank you for this.
Okay.
That's Antonia Reid, a producer for CBC Radio, talking about snoring and the impact it can have on your health. It is 8:28 a.m. Monday morning, and everything outside looks kind of gray-blue from the sky through that air that's got a light breeze in it, a little bit of a dusting of snow, and then to the ground with the snow piles. Really looks January. If you took a picture, you could probably guess the month. But the temperature actually is pretty decent, -12 in the city of Winnipeg this morning. And we look ahead to the week, we might even see highs like -5 midweek. So we'll hang on tight and we'll see if that develops for us. In Winnipeg, that is. Now, to the north, extreme cold warning right now for Lynn Lake, Leaf Rapids, Puck, Brochet, and Tuduli, as well as Churchill and York. You are going to be seeing wind chill values of around -45, -50, so very cold in parts of northern Manitoba today. Well, coming up, there is something new I want to tell you about. The new Canada Tonight, hosted by Travis Donraj, begins today on CBC Newsnet. So tonight, Travis is in conversation with Rosalie Abella, Canada's first female Jewish Supreme Court Justice, who's commenting on the divisions in our country and the rise of anti-Semitism in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war. So that's on Canada Tonight. It's at 6 o'clock our time, that's Central, on CBC Newsnet. It streams on CBC Gem, so you can catch our local news and then head over and check the stream out and go back to the start. But it's the first night officially for the new Canada Tonight by host Travis Donraj. So that is something you can check out. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is -12. Temperature's going to be close to where we are now. -11 is the high today with a bit of a north breeze. And as Marcy mentioned, we do get quite warm, messy by midweek. Top Indigenous leaders in Manitoba have cut ties with the Winnipeg Hotel over the treatment of a First Nations woman there. About 100 protesters stormed the Marlborough Hotel yesterday. A widely shared video on social media shows a young woman restrained with zip ties in the lobby of the Marlborough Hotel. Police say hotel staff called them Christmas Day to ask them to remove her because she wasn't a patron. They were called a second time when she allegedly returned that afternoon and tried to stab someone. Police say hotel staff bound her wrists with zip ties until police arrived. Throughout the video, the woman accuses hotel staff of assaulting her. MKO Grand Chief Garrison Settee calls the woman's treatment deplorable.
What has happened here is inhumane. What has happened here is a disgrace to one Indigenous woman. And that video that went out made a lot of people angry, made a lot of our people upset. And when you call on us, we will be there because we are here for our people, the grassroots people.
That is Garrison Settee of MKO. Now, videos circulating on social media also show people sneaking downstairs during the rally and ransacking the hotel's basement, including breaking open storage lockers. Police confirm they are investigating. As for the December incident caught on tape, the general manager of the Marlborough Hotel has released a statement. Rakib Hokug says the woman was intoxicated and had a knife in the hotel lobby. He says she was threatening guests and staff. And he wants to assure the community the intention was to prevent the woman from harming herself or others until police got there. He says they did not issue a statement earlier because the matter is before the courts. Immigration Minister Mark Miller is unveiling new measures to limit the number of international students coming to Canada. Among those measures, a temporary 2-year cap on international student permits, which will cut the number issued by roughly 35%.
These measures are not against individual international students. They are to ensure that as future students arrive in Canada, they receive the quality of education that they signed up for and the hope that they were provided in their home countries. It would be a disservice to welcome international students in Canada knowing not all of them are getting the resources they need to succeed in Canada and having them return home disillusioned and disappointed in Canada's education system.
Now, the number of permits issued to international students has tripled over the last decade, and once again, that number is being cut by 35%. Mark Miller is also changing the eligibility criteria for international student work permits. The announcement comes as the Trudeau cabinet holds a 3-day retreat in Montreal. A survivor from a stabbing in the paw is speaking out after another man was killed in a separate attack on the same day, Friday afternoon. Oliver Hart was stabbed just above his right hip. He says he watched, though, as another man, Eugene Michel, died beside him in the hospital.
I definitely want these three perpetrators arrested. I want them facing justice. They need to pay for what they did to Eugene and what they did to me.
RCMP have since arrested 2 teens and 1 adult. All 3 are in custody. Hart believes changes to dispatching in the paw could have saved Michelle's life. Hart's in hospital in Winnipeg. He's not sure yet when he will get to go home. The Manitoba Trucking Association is pushing for increased measures to keep the Trans-Canada Highway open during snowfall and high winds. In the last 5 years, Highway 1 between Headingley and Portage-la-Prairie has closed 24 times because of poor weather. Trucking Association President Aaron Dolinick says each closure can cost Manitoba's economy tens of thousands of dollars. His members would like to see increased plowing and more digital signs.
Road conditions can vary quite a bit from what we see right here around Winnipeg. So just informing motorists ahead of time what to expect when entering the Trans-Canada Highway would go a long way.
The province says it is committed to 24-hour plowing on major roads, but aging equipment and staff vacancies, it says, have prevented that from happening. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba. You can also check out the CBC News app.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, we do have one developing issue in traffic. Nolan?
Yes, we just got one call on the CBC commuter line. Talbot is now closed between Gray and Gateway. Emergency vehicles are on scene there, so do alter your route accordingly this morning. Also watching out for those highways in western Manitoba because of reduced visibility and snow-covered sections as you get near the Saskatchewan border in the Parkland region. Looking like a beautiful day here in the city of Winnipeg, but still we've got extreme cold warnings up in around Churchill with wind chill values expected to even go down to minus 53. So do bundle up in the northern part of the province, and we'll be back here on Up to Speed to help you get to the rest of your commute. That's from 3 to 6 o'clock here on CBC Radio 1. And, of course, Radio Noon coming up at 12 o'clock as well. Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you, Nolan. Nolan Kaler's been filling in. You've been getting the Monday shifts, filling in for Corey. And speaking of filling in, Chloe Friesen. Thank you. Chloe's behind the controls this morning, filling in for Abby. Thanks to Brad Lillies, as well to our other live crew members this morning out in our news department, Megan Ketcherson, Joni Nicolo, and Heather Wells. And thank you for listening each and every morning to Information Radio. Thanks to our hardworking team of associate producers, our leaders in unit, are Nellie Gonzalez, who's the show's producer in CA Current Affairs, that is, and the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba is Leif Larson. Thank you, guys. Coming up on The Current, which immediately follows our show here, companies are pouring thousands of dollars into programs that help employees' well-being, but some research shows they don't really make that much of a difference. So take the ping pong table out and recycle it. I'm just kidding. We'll hear more, though, about why they don't make a difference and what measures they're talking about. So stay tuned for that. Also, remember, throughout the day, we'll have much analysis of Immigration Minister Mark Miller's announcement. He unveiled this morning officially new measures to limit the number of international students coming to Canada. So we'll get local reaction and more. So stay tuned and stay close to CBC through your day. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Take care. Thanks for making us part of your morning. Talk to you tomorrow.